I'm the Midnight Storyteller, here to keep you company through the quiet hours. Many of you listen to these stories to fall asleep, and I'm honored to guide you there. And before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps keep the stories alive. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? And what time is it on your side of the night? Now, get comfortable, relax, and let's begin. Adrian adjusted the strap of his camera bag as he stepped onto the warped porch of Deadlock property. The boards groaned beneath his weight as if the house were sighing, long and exhausted. The job was simple: photograph the interior before demolition. A real estate gig, no different from the dozens he had done before, except this one had a story. They say a family lived here once. Parents, 2 kids, just vanished. He pushed the thought aside. A job was a job. The front door opened easily. No dust, no cobwebs, not abandoned enough. Adrian set up his camera. Click. The shutter echoed in the hollow space. Click. The living room, untouched furniture under sheets. Click. The staircase, curving upwards into shadow. The hallway, empty except for a long, gold-framed mirror. When he turned back toward the living room, he froze. The chair he had just photographed had moved. It was subtle, maybe an inch to the left, but he had an eye for detail, and he knew exactly where it had been. A draft, foundation settling. He stepped closer. The mirror at the end of the hallway caught his reflection, and that was when the real unease began. His reflection should have matched his movements. It didn't. For a moment his mirror itself stood still, watching him, before slowly turning to face away. Adrian blinked. His chest tightened. It was just a trick of light. Right, the kitchen smelled wrong. Not rotten, just off. There was still a plate of food on the counter, dried and cracked as if left in the middle of a meal decades ago. A hissing whisper crackled from the corner. The old answering machine had turned on by itself. The red message light blinked. Adrian hesitated, then pressed play. A voice whispered through static. "You weren't supposed to leave." Adrian's hands went cold. He turned too fast and his shoulder bumped the dining room table. The sound it made was wrong. Not the hollow clunk of wood, but something deeper, as if the table were bolted to the house itself. Then he saw it, on the shelf near the window, an old photo album. He flipped through the pages. The first few photos were ordinary: a family, smiling, a mother, a father, 2 kids. But then he saw himself. A picture of a boy at age 6, his eyes, his face, unmistakable. A picture of a teenager at 15, him again, but these weren't his memories. He was never here. He had never lived in this house. Adrian's pulse pounded as he grabbed his bag and bolted for the door. Locked. He twisted the knob violently, yanking. Nothing. The windows sealed shut. The mirror in the hallway rippled. His reflection, the other Adrian, was still standing there, watching. And then it smiled. Adrian's breath came sharp and fast. He turned and ran upstairs, searching for another way out. The hallway was longer now. Impossible. There had only been 4 doors before, but now there were dozens, all of them slightly ajar, and from behind them he heard movement. Soft footsteps, the rustling of fabric, the slow, careful breathing of something just out of sight. The whisper came again. "We never do." He clenched his fists. "No." He threw open one of the doors, and inside he saw himself, sitting on a chair, staring back at him, an older version of himself, gray-haired, hollow-eyed. His own voice rasped out of the old man's mouth. "It's not a house." The walls trembled. The mirror at the end of the hall split into cracks. Adrian turned to run, and the floor gave way beneath him. Darkness, then a flash, not from his eyes, from his camera. Adrian was standing again. The house had reset. Everything was exactly as before. The furniture covered in sheets, the mirror whole again, the answering machine silent. His camera sat on the table. On screen was a picture of himself, taken from behind. Someone had taken the picture. His hands were shaking now. He lifted the camera, slowly, cautiously, and turned the lens to the mirror. Through the camera he saw the hallway behind him. Something was there. A shadowed figure standing at the top of the stairs. No, not a shadow, a reflection. His own. Only it was smiling. Adrian dropped the camera. The whisper was right behind him now. Cold breath on his ear. You weren't supposed to leave. The next morning the demolition team arrived. They checked their paperwork. The old deadlocked property was scheduled to be torn down today. Only it was still standing. A real estate agent stepped inside, frowning. The house was clean, maintained, not abandoned at all. Near the staircase he saw a man standing in the corner, holding a camera. Adrian. The agent hesitated. Didn't think anyone was living here. Adrian didn't respond. He just lifted the camera and took the picture. The end. Mia gripped the steering wheel as the road stretched endlessly ahead, swallowed by the night. Her phone had died an hour ago, and her GPS screen had frozen before that. The map fractured into a mosaic of digital noise. She had been driving for miles, past empty fields and skeletal trees that seemed to lean closer each time she glanced in the rearview mirror. She wasn't lost, not exactly, but she didn't know where she was. The highway had been deserted for the past 20 minutes, and then she had made that wrong turn. She was sure the sign had said exit 34A, the one she needed. But now she couldn't find the entrance ramp again, only this narrow, unmarked road that refused to end. A road sign loomed ahead, barely catching in her headlights. Last exit, 5 miles ahead. The same sign she had passed 20 minutes ago. Mia's breath hitched. Her eyes flicked to the dashboard clock. 2:37 a.m. She could have sworn it was already past 3. She reached for the radio, desperate for anything to ground her. Static hissed through the speakers, a grating insectile buzz that set her teeth on edge. She twisted the knob, searching for a station, but the noise only deepened. Then, beneath the distortion, voices, fragmented, distant. Search continues for missing woman. Last seen driving a black sedan late at night. Mia's stomach clenched. Mia Carter, age 26, vanished without a trace. Her foot lifted from the gas. That was her name. That was her name. The engine hummed beneath her, steady, expectant. The road continued its silent pull forward. A figure flashed past in her peripheral vision. Her hands jerked the wheel, the car swerving before she corrected it, heart hammering. She turned her head in a panic. Nothing. Just darkness and empty road. She pressed harder on the gas. The next road sign glowed ahead, sharp against the night. Last exit 5 miles ahead. No, that wasn't right. She had driven at least 5 miles by now. Her fingers tightened around the wheel, her nails digging into the leather. This wasn't normal. She'd get off this road. She had to. Then, just ahead, headlights. A wrecked car rested in the ditch beside the road, metal twisted, windshield shattered. She barely had time to process it before something even worse clicked into place in her mind. The car was hers. Same make, same model, Same dent on the driver's side door from that time she clipped a pole at the gas station. Her breath sought in and out of her throat as she slowed, her headlights spilling over the wreckage. The driver's door hung open, glass scattered like diamonds across the asphalt. Inside the car, slumped against the wheel, was her own body. Mia, her face pale, slack, blood trailing from her temple, the hollow stare of open, unseeing eyes. She screamed, slamming her foot on the gas. The car shot forward, tires screeching. The road blurred past her, trees warping into dark smudges at the edge of her vision. The radio crackled again. Turn back. Her fingers clenched so tight she thought they might snap. No, I am getting off this road. The engine roared as she sped up, the speedometer climbing, 70, 80, 90. The next road sign flickered past, barely visible. Last exit, 5 miles ahead. Tears burned in her eyes. It wasn't changing. Then, the headlights. Another wreck, another car, identical to hers. She barely registered swerving past it, but she saw the shape inside, slumped, lifeless. A second version of her. The radio let out a sharp burst of static, then a voice. Her own voice. Please, you have to turn back. Mia let out a sob, her hands trembling on the wheel. No, I don't understand. What is this? A figure stood in the middle of the road ahead. She jerked the wheel hard. The tires shrieked. The world spun. Dark trees, black asphalt, sky, ground, sky, before everything slammed into silence. Darkness swallowed her whole. The first rays of morning crept over the road as Officer Ray Carter pulled up behind the wreckage. He stepped out, coffee in one hand, the other hovering near his belt. Another one. The car was mangled, metal warped from the force of the crash. The driver's side was worst, crushed, glass fractured in delicate veins across the windshield. He peered inside. A woman, body limp, blood trailing from her temple. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Jesus. His partner, Lopez, approached from the other side of the wreck. That's the third one this month. Ray nodded. Yeah. Lopez rubbed the back of his neck. You, notice anything weird? Ray exhaled, shaking his head. You mean the fact that they all look the same? Silence. They both looked at the body. She did. Exactly the same. Every detail down to the freckles across her nose, the small scar on her chin. Ray's gut twisted. He had been doing this job long enough to know when something wasn't right. Lopez shifted uneasily. What do we put in the report? Ray stared at the wreck, at the still form inside, at the road that stretched ahead, silent, empty, waiting. He didn't have an answer, but he knew one thing. There would be another and another. The last exit was never meant for her, not for any of them. The end. Greg Harper rubbed his eyes, the edges of his vision humming with exhaustion. The soft glow of his bathroom's LED mirror cast a clinical light over his face, hollow-eyed, unshaven, worn thin. His latest project, a high-profile skyscraper design, had drained him over the past few weeks. 3 hours of sleep a night at best. He blinked. His reflection blinked a fraction of a second later. Greg frowned. A trick of the light, the angle, maybe. He leaned forward, studying his own face, the subtle curve of his cheekbones, the shadow of stubble along his jaw. Normal. Then his reflection exhaled a moment after him. His stomach tensed. Greg shook his head, turned off the light, and went to bed. Just sleep deprivation. That was all. The next morning, the mirror felt different. Greg moved his hand, watching it closely. There, a hesitation. So small, so insignificant, yet wrong. The lag grew worse over the next few days. At first, it was a subtle delay in his movements, a blink slightly off beat, a wave that came a beat too late. But then, the reflection started making mistakes. Greg lifted his coffee mug to his lips. The reflection mimicked him, but the handle was in the wrong direction. His breath hitched. He set the mug down and waved both hands in front of the mirror. The reflection followed, but the left hand was too slow. He stopped moving. The reflection shifted its weight. His stomach twisted. He turned away, pulse pounding against his ribs. He told himself it was nothing, that his mind was playing tricks on him, that he had to get more sleep. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching. By the end of the week, the paranoia was unbearable. Greg covered every reflective surface in his apartment. He draped towels over the bathroom mirror, threw bed sheets over the full-length glass closet doors, even turned the TV screen to face the wall. He couldn't risk seeing himself. That night, he bolted awake, heart hammering. His room was too bright. The sheet over the closet mirror was gone. Greg sat up slowly, the skin on his arms prickling. The air felt dense, heavy, like something was in the room with him. He reached for his phone, flipping on the camera. His breath stopped. In the reflection of the dark window, someone was sitting on his bed. Him. He spun around. The bed was empty. His reflection had been watching. Greg set up security cameras. If he was losing his mind, the footage would tell him. He fast-forwarded through hours of empty footage. Nothing. Then at 3:47 a.m., the motion detector flagged movement. Greg clicked play. At first, there was only darkness. Then a shape moved. Himself. Greg watched as his own body sat up in bed. He watched himself stand, turn toward the mirror, and smile. Except he hadn't. He had been asleep. The Greg on screen walked to the bathroom, but in the reflection of the mirror, the real Greg was still in bed. Greg shut the laptop with a snap, his breath coming in sharp bursts. It wasn't him. He avoided mirrors entirely after that. He left the sheets draped over them, never uncovering them. But the reflections kept learning. One evening on his way home, Greg spotted something on the other side of the street. Himself, standing in the cold, staring straight at him. Greg's legs locked. The figure didn't move, just watched. Then, in slow, deliberate motion, the reflection tilted its head to the left. A perfect copy of how Greg had done it yesterday. It had been practicing. Greg's stomach turned. He bolted up the stairs to his apartment, locking the door behind him. He knew now it was taking its time, studying, learning, preparing. Greg couldn't run from it. He had to face it. He stepped into the bathroom, flipping on the harsh white light. He gripped the edges of the sink, staring into the mirror. His reflection stared back. Greg raised his right hand. It copied. Greg stopped moving. The reflection kept going. Greg's breath caught in his throat. The other him blinked too late. A delayed, awkward flicker. Its lips twitched into a smile. The lights flickered. The mirror's surface rippled. And then, Greg couldn't move. He was looking out at himself from inside the mirror. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. His hands, his body, they weren't his anymore. On the other side of the glass, his doppelganger smiled. It reached forward, pressing a palm against the mirror, then turned and walked away. Greg pounded his fists against the glass, but it made no sound. The new Greg lived his life perfectly. No one noticed the change. He went to work, answered calls, smiled. The only difference, he never blinked. Inside the mirror, the real Greg watched. His throat was raw from screaming soundlessly. Days passed, then weeks, then months. No one remembered him. The last thing Greg saw where darkness consumed completely was his reflection staring back at him, mouth open, silent, mouthing two words, "Let me out. The end." Maya Rodriguez had chased urban legends before. Missing towns, erased people, things that weren't supposed to exist. They always ended in the same way. Rumors, exaggerations, or an unsatisfying dead end. But this time was different. The city archives held no mention of Crestwood Avenue, no old street listings, no property deeds, no records of zoning or demolitions. Google Maps showed an empty stretch of undeveloped land where it should have been. And yet, there it was. A perfect row of suburban houses stood before her, bathed in the fading afternoon light. Neat lawns, driveways, welcome mats. It looked untouched by time, as if a single moment had been frozen decades ago. Maya parked at the curb, glancing down at her phone. No GPS signal. The street name was blank. A trick of the system, she told herself. Still, something about the air felt off, thicker, heavier. There was no wind, no birds, not even the distant hum of traffic. Too quiet. She stepped up to the nearest house, its curtains drawn shut. The door was unlocked. Inside, the scent of cooked food and old dust hit her like a wall. A dining table sat fully set. Plates, silverware, half-full glasses of water. A roast sat on a platter, long since dried and hardened. Yet there were no signs of decay, no rot. It was as if the meal had been prepared, but never eaten. She touched a chair, warm. From upstairs, something creaked. She wasn't alone. Maya took a slow step back. The silence inside wasn't empty. It was listening. The second-floor landing was shadowed, the hallway stretching into darkness. The creaking came again, footsteps, light and deliberate, but there was no one there. Her hands clenched. "Hello." The silence answered. She turned, moving swiftly to the door. Outside, the evening had deepened unnaturally fast. The sky was darker, the air colder. Then she saw it. Across the street, her apartment building stood exactly as it was in the real world. The balcony, the flower pots, a perfect replica. Her stomach dropped. That wasn't there before. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. The screen was glitching, flickering like a VHS tape caught between frames. One message from her own number. "Welcome home." Maya's breath came fast. Her fingers were ice. This was wrong. She turned, forcing herself to move. Get in the car, drive away, report this. The wheels spun against the pavement, but the car didn't move. No roads led out. Every turn led her back to the same street, the same houses, the same impossible duplicate of her apartment. The city didn't remember this place, but it remembered her. Panic clawed at her throat. The houses weren't empty anymore. Lights flickered on one by one. Through the drawn curtains, shadows moved. Figures pressed against the windows, not quite human, not quite real. Their shapes distorted, stretched at the edges like smudged photographs. One of them waved. Maya stumbled backward, her breathing ragged. Inside the nearest house, the dining chairs had moved. The plates had been disturbed. The roast was gone. Someone had eaten. Her legs refused to work, her body glitching between action and paralysis. The ground beneath her shifted, subtly but undeniably, like the earth was trying to pull her under. Her apartment stood across the street, unchanged, except for one thing. The curtains on her bedroom window had been drawn open. Someone was standing inside, watching her. A sob caught in her throat. No. This was not real. This was... Her phone buzzed again. Come inside. The lights in the houses flickered. The figures in the windows multiplied. The neighborhood had been waiting, and now wanted her to stay. She ran, not to the car, not to the road, to the only thing left, her own apartment. The door was unlocked. Inside, everything was exactly as it should be. Familiar furniture, the smell of home. But something was off. The air was thicker here, heavier than before. The walls looked softer, like a wet painting. The kitchen table was set for dinner, just as the ones in the other houses had been. Only this time, it was her food, her plate, her glass. Her fork was resting against the bite-marked edge of her meal. She was already here. Maya backed away, heart hammering. Her body felt less solid, like she was flickering between two places at once. A shadow passed behind her in the hallway. Not possible. She turned. A figure stood in the doorway, watching her with a familiar expression. She knew that face, because it was hers. The other Maya smiled. She raised her phone, showing the latest message. "You are home now," Maya screamed, but the sound never came. The walls shuddered, the air folded, and the neighborhood closed its doors around her. Somewhere in the real city, her name vanished from existence. No records, no past, no missing persons report. Crestwood Avenue was never found. In the forgotten neighborhood, it still has residents. They just aren't people anymore. The end. The underground tunnels shouldn't have been there, not according to the blueprints. Yet here they were, stretching miles beneath the newly built corporate headquarters, an unseen labyrinth woven through the foundation like veins under skin. 5 engineers had been sent down to investigate. Their task simple: survey the structures, assess any risks. But the moment they stepped inside, something felt wrong. The air was dense and stale, heavy with the scent of damp stone and something else, something that smelled old. Ethan adjusted his flashlight, the dim beam flickering across smooth concrete walls. Anyone else getting a bad feeling? Priya muttered. Marcus exhaled sharply. Oh, absolutely. This isn't in any of the construction reports, Leah added, frowning as she scrolled through blueprints on her tablet. There's no record of this existing. Alex swept her flashlight along the walls, scanning for signs of recent construction. Then who built it? No one had an answer. The deeper they went, the more unnatural it felt. The walls, once uniform, grew jagged, as though something had worn them down over time. The tunnel sloped subtly downward. The hum of the city above faded, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed against their ears. Then they found the first sign. A metal lunchbox, rusted hinges barely holding together, sat abandoned against the wall. Ethan crouched and pried it open. Inside was a half-eaten sandwich, now black with decay, and beside it an ID card. The plastic was yellowed, the ink faded, but the name was still legible. Ethan Marshall. A cold weight settled in his stomach. That's not funny, Alex said, peering over his shoulder. Ethan flipped the card. His own face stared back at him, younger somehow. Marcus stepped closer, his voice unsteady. Where the hell did that come from? No one spoke. Then Priya let out a shaky breath. Look, she pointed to the ground where the dust had settled over something solid. Ethan knelt, wiping it clean with his sleeve. A notebook lay beneath the grime, the pages curled with moisture. He flipped through it. The handwriting was Priya's. A recent entry, scrawled in trembling letters, read, "We have to get out. We have to get out." Priya jerked back as if burned. No, that's not mine. Alex's flashlight caught something further down the tunnel, a stack of papers resting on an old metal desk. Leah was the first to grab them. Her breath hitched. No. "What is it?" Ethan asked. Her hands trembled as she held up the engineering report. Their names were listed on it, all 5 of them. Project engineers: Ethan Marshall, Alexandra Porter, Priya Singh, Marcus Lee, Leah Carter. Stapled to the top corner were photographs, their faces, the same clothes, the same features, not lookalikes, them. "This isn't real," Marcus whispered. "Then explain it." Leah's voice shook. No one could. Then a scream tore through the silence. Leah's. They turned just in time to see her vanish. 1 second, she was there. The next, gone. No sign of struggle, no sound beyond their own ragged breaths. "Where?" Priya stammered. Alex snatched Leah's tablet from the floor. It had landed face up, the screen flickering with security footage from the building above. The footage showed the tunnel entrance, and there, stepping inside, were 4 people. Them, same uniforms, same movements, but the timestamp was from 3 days ago. Then another feed loaded, different timestamp, a year ago. Same 4 figures, stepping into the tunnels. Then again, 4 years ago, again and again, always the same. Walking in, never leaving. The radio clip to Ethan's vest crackled to life, static filled the tunnel. Then a distorted voice. 4 of them, walking in again. Ethan's blood ran cold. Alex backed toward the tunnel's entrance. "We need to go, now." They turned to run back the way they came, but the tunnel had changed. The space had narrowed, the walls pressing closer together. What was once wide enough for 5 was now barely enough for 2. Marcus shoved against the wall. No, this isn't right." The concrete was warm beneath his palms, alive. A message was scrawled in rust-colored letters along the wall. "You were never meant to leave." A gust of cold air whispered against Ethan's neck, but there was no wind in the tunnels. Then the lights flickered out, and in the darkness, something breathed. The end. Lucy woke to the soft hum of fluorescent lights. Her body ached, her mind swam in a haze of anesthesia, and a dull pressure throbbed beneath her ribs. The scent of antiseptic and something else, something faintly metallic, hung in the air. A nurse stood beside her bed, holding a tightly swaddled bundle. "Mrs. Harper, congratulations," the woman said, her voice low and practiced, like a recording. "Your baby is here." Lucy blinked, trying to focus. The world swayed. She reached out with weak, trembling arms, and the bundle was placed into them. A baby. Her baby. But something was wrong. The infant's skin was paler than she remembered from the brief moment before she'd passed out in the operating room. The nose was a little smaller, the eyelids a fraction less heavy. A whisper of wrongness crawled through her skull. "This isn't," she croaked, voice dry as paper. "Shush," the nurse soothed. "You're exhausted. Everything is fine." The words slid over Lucy's skin like oil. She opened her mouth again, but the nurse gently adjusted the IV drip. A deep warmth spread through her body. The edges of the world smudged. Lucy woke to voices. Her husband Ben was speaking softly with a doctor. "She keeps insisting the baby looks different," Ben murmured. His voice was hushed but tense. "That's common," the doctor replied smoothly. "Post-anesthesia disorientation. Medications can also cause mild confusion. She'll adjust." Lucy turned her head. Her throat was dry, but she managed to rasp, "I'm not confused." Ben hurried to her side, forcing a smile. "Hey, Lou, you scared me there." He kissed her forehead, but his eyes held something behind them, uncertainty, pity. She looked past him, to the bassinet by the hospital bed. The baby was awake, staring up at her with dark, glossy eyes. Lucy swallowed. I want a DNA test. Ben's smile faltered. Luke, come on. Humor me, she whispered. Ben hesitated, then glanced at the doctor. Can we do that? The doctor smiled in a way that did not reach his eyes. Of course, but I assure you, Mrs. Harper, this is your baby. You're just adjusting. The results arrived that evening. 99.9% match. This was her child. Lucy stared at the paper, heart hammering against her ribs. It didn't make sense. But, I remember, her memories of the delivery were blurred, but the baby they had shown her just before she blacked out looked different. A fraction of a difference, but enough. Enough to make her feel like something was terribly, terribly wrong. See, Ben said, voice too light. Everything's fine. But it wasn't. That night, as Lucy lay awake in the dim hospital room, she watched the baby sleep in the bassinet. She counted the rise and fall of its tiny chest. She told herself she was just exhausted, overthinking, being paranoid. Then at 3:12 a.m., she woke to a sound that shouldn't have been there. A low, mechanical whirring. Lucy turned her head and froze. A nurse stood over the bassinet. She was switching the baby's wristband. Hey, Lucy rasped, trying to sit up. Her body didn't move. The nurse turned slowly. Her face was blank. No guilt, no fear, just calm efficiency. Lucy's vision swam. She tried to scream, but the moment stretched, twisted. Her eyelids sagged, her head lolled. Darkness took her. Lucy awoke to a different baby. It had the same features, the same round cheeks and tiny hands. But the eyes were a shade darker than they had been before. She turned to Ben. Ben. Her voice quivered. That's not the same baby. Ben's entire body tensed. Lucy, he said carefully, like someone speaking to a frightened animal. Look at me. You're tired. You're on medication. Lucy's breath hitched. But you see it, don't you? Ben hesitated. A fraction of a second, but she saw it. And then, the doctor was in the room. His voice was soothing, firm. Mrs. Harper, we'll be increasing your medication. Just a little something to help with the stress. Lucy's pulse slammed against her throat. They were sedating her, making her doubt herself, gaslighting her. She needed proof. Lucy pretended to take the sleeping pills. She waited for the voices outside her door to fade. Then she snuck out. The maternity ward was silent. Rows of bassinets lined the dimly lit room. Babies slept soundlessly, their tiny hands curled into fists. Lucy's stomach twisted. Every single baby looked the same. Same round cheeks, same faint birthmark on the left ear, same exact features. Impossible. A sharp sob caught in her throat. A movement. Someone else was there. A nurse stood at the far end of the room, whispering urgently into a phone. Then she turned. Her eyes met Lucy's, and for the first time, someone looked afraid. She hurried forward, voice shaking. You have to leave. They're watching. Lucy grabbed her arm. Please, tell me what's happening. Is this some kind of mistake? Are they cloning them? The nurse's eyes darted around. Then in a whisper so faint Lucy barely caught it. They keep switching them. They don't know which one was the first. Lucy's blood ran cold. Footsteps. The nurse stiffened. She yanked away, stepping back. Go back to bed, Mrs. Harper, she said loudly. Lucy turned. The doctor stood in the doorway. His eyes were dark, unreadable. He smiled. Mrs. Harper, I think we need to adjust your treatment plan. They discharged Lucy that morning. Ben drove in silence. She cradled the baby in her arms, forcing herself to memorize every tiny detail. The round cheeks, the small nose. At home, she rocked the infant in the nursery, whispering softly, her baby, her baby. Then in the dim light, she noticed something. The birthmark was gone. Her breath caught. Ben entered the room, smiling. Hey, you okay? Lucy turned to him, feeling something fracture in her mind. A long pause, then she forced a smile. "Of course," she whispered. "Of course it's him." And slowly she rocked the baby, even as her fingers trembled, even as she realized she was trapped, because they would just keep replacing him, and no one would ever believe her. Outside the nursery, Ben stood in the hallway, watching her through the half-open door, and in his arms he cradled another identical baby. The end. Adam stood at the foot of the driveway, staring at the house. It was exactly the same. He expected small changes, different paint, a new roof, maybe a porch swing that wasn't there before. But no. The house on Fairwood Drive was untouched, frozen in time like a photograph. The red door still had the tiny dent from when he crashed his bike into it at 10 years old. The wind chime, his mother's favorite, still tinkled on the porch, though no breeze stirred the air. Something felt off. He stepped inside. The smell of lemon cleaner and faint cigarette smoke, his father's scent, still lingered. The living room was arranged precisely as he remembered. The couch, the coffee table, the porcelain dog figurine his mother used to dust every Sunday. None of this made sense. His parents had sold the house years ago. Some young couple had moved in. So why did it still look like his home? Then from upstairs, a thump. His eyes lifted to the ceiling. The attic. It was locked, just as it always had been. That night, Adam lay in his childhood bed staring at the ceiling. The room smelled of old wood and dust, like it had been shut away for years. And yet the bed felt lived in, like someone had just climbed out of it. Then, a creak. It came from the attic. Another creak. Then whispers. His breath caught. The sound came through the air vent near his bed. Too soft to make out words, but unmistakably voices. More than one. Adam sat up, heart hammering. The attic had always been a mystery, its door locked tight his whole life. His father used to say it was just storage, but Adam had never seen anyone go up there. A whisper rose just enough to be heard. "He's back." Adam grabbed his phone, hands shaking. He dialed his brother's number. No signal. He tried again. Nothing. His fingers scrolled through his texts. They were all gone. In the morning, Adam stumbled to the kitchen, exhausted, and stopped cold. His childhood backpack sat on the table. The zipper was half open, revealing his old books and notebooks inside. A stuffed bear sat beside it, the one he'd lost when he was 6. He hadn't brought these here. His breath quickened. He turned to the hallway. The closet door stood ajar. Inside, his old coat hung neatly on a hanger, the sleeves swaying slightly. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. He grabbed his keys and bolted for the front door. Outside, Mrs. Kearney, the neighbor from across the street, was trimming her roses. She looked up and smiled warmly. "Morning, Adam. You're up early." His mouth went dry. "How do you know my name?" She blinked at him. "You've lived here your whole life, dear." Adam ran down the street, past houses that suddenly seemed unfamiliar. He turned a corner and found himself at Fairwood Market, the store he used to visit as a kid. He rushed inside, panting. The man behind the counter, an old guy in a blue apron, grinned. "Well, if it ain't Adam, haven't seen you since yesterday." Adam staggered back. No, that's not possible. I moved away years ago. I haven't been here since." The man's smile faded, his eyes darkened. "You feeling okay, son?" Adam's hands trembled as he pulled out his wallet. His driver's license was gone. He yanked his phone from his pocket, swiping to his photos. The images were there. but in every single one his face was missing. Blurred out, erased, he bolted. Back at the house, the attic door stood open. Adam didn't remember unlocking it. The whispers were louder now, urgent, insistent. You shouldn't have left. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. The attic was dimly lit, the air thick with dust and something else, something old. At the center of the room, a single bed sat beneath the slanted ceiling. The blankets were rumpled as though someone had just climbed out of it. On the bedside table lay a framed photo. He picked it up with shaking fingers. It was a picture of his family, his parents, his brother, and himself. Only his face was missing. Completely gone. The space where he should have been replaced with a blank, smudged void. The whispers surged. You were never meant to leave. Adam staggered back and saw the mirror. It stood in the corner, old and cracked, its glass warped. His reflection was wrong, distorted, and then it moved, not in sync with him, independently. The thing in the mirror tilted its head, staring at him with hollow, blackened eyes. It opened its mouth. Welcome home. The attic door slammed shut. The house is quiet now. Adam still lives there. The neighbors smile when they see him. They always knew he'd never leave. And in the attic behind the locked door, the mirror still whispers his name. The end. The diner hummed with the soft buzz of flickering fluorescent lights. Nina wiped down the counter for the third time that night, more out of habit than necessity. The only customers left were a couple of long-haul truckers nursing their coffee, their tired eyes barely lifting when the bell over the door jingled. 3:12 a.m. The man in the gray suit walked in. Nina froze, her grip tightening on the rag. He moved like clockwork. Same time, same slow, deliberate steps. He always sat at booth 6 by the window. He never ordered, never spoke, just sat there staring. Her manager, Evelyn, had warned her, don't look at him too long. Don't talk to him. He's always been here. But Nina had worked here for 6 months. 6 months of the same eerie routine. Every night she felt the itch of his gaze crawling up her skin. Her hands trembled as she poured coffee for a customer, the liquid nearly spilling over the rim. It was unbearable. She had to know. Nina took a deep breath, steeling herself. Then, against every instinct screaming inside her, she walked over to booth 6. The man in the gray suit didn't blink. His hands rested perfectly still on the table, fingers barely touching, like a mannequin posed for a photograph. Do you need anything? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. For the first time he moved, his head tilted slightly, a slow, deliberate motion. Then his lips curled into a thin smile. The lights flickered. The diner went dark for less than a second, but when the buzzing fluorescence returned, Nina's breath hitched. The truckers were gone. The counter was clean. The kitchen was silent. The diner was empty. Except for her and him. Nina stumbled backward, her breath ragged. Hello, she called out, her voice swallowed by the humming lights. No answer. She turned toward the front door, but the open sign flickered unreadable. The windows, where the dark highway should have been, were black. Not nighttime black. Not the darkness of an unlit street. Just nothing. Like the world had been erased. She whirled around, her pulse pounding in her throat. The man in the gray suit still sat there, still smiling. Something is wrong. She rushed behind the counter and grabbed her phone. No signal, no time. The screen blinked, 3:12 a.m. She tried to call Evelyn. No response. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps. She backed away from the counter, but her feet felt heavy, like she was moving through water. Her limbs sluggish, her head clouded. The diner felt smaller. She turned to the security monitor mounted behind the counter. The grainy black and white footage showed the inside of the diner. Empty booths, polished countertops, buzzing lights, and her, sitting in booth 6. She gasped, stumbling back. No, that wasn't right. She was standing right here, watching the screen. But there in the footage, she sat frozen at the booth, blank eyes staring straight ahead. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She turned back to the booth, empty. She whipped back to the screen. The footage changed. Now the timestamp read yesterday, 3:12 a.m., and she was sitting in the same booth. Nina's breath hitched. She scrubbed through the footage, her fingers trembling. The night before, she was there. The night before that, there again, a week ago. Every single night, sitting, staring. The bell over the door jingled. Nina's blood turned to ice. Slowly she turned. A woman stood there, young, tired, dressed in a waitress uniform. A uniform just like Nina's. The girl's face was familiar. Nina's breath caught in her throat. It was her, not a reflection, not a hallucination. Another her. The girl walked past the counter, her eyes dull, lifeless. She stepped toward booth 6 and slid into the seat, folding her hands neatly on the table. Nina's vision blurred. Her mind reeled. What is this? She whispered. The Nina in the booth turned her head, her blank eyes meeting hers for the first time. You're late, she said. The lights flickered. Everything went black. The bell over the door jingled. 3:12 a.m. Jared adjusted his apron, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. His first night shift at the diner. Easy money, they said, just a few customers before dawn. His manager, Evelyn, had given him one rule. If you see someone sitting in booth 6, she had said, her voice firm, don't talk to her. Don't look too long. She's always been here. He nodded, not thinking much of it. But when the bell rang and the door swung open, he paused. A woman in a waitress uniform walked in. She moved silently, like she already knew the place. She sat at booth 6, staring straight ahead. She didn't blink, didn't move, just sat there, watching, waiting. The end. The landlord's words echoed in Aiden's head the night he first heard it. A knock, a single deliberate rap against the wood. Then another. Knock. Knock. He sat up in bed, his breath hitching. His apartment was dark, the glow of his laptop screen casting faint blue light across the sheets. He reached for his phone, 3:03 a.m. If it knocks twice, pretend you're asleep. He swallowed hard, forcing his body to still. Maybe someone was drunk at the wrong door. Maybe. The handle rattled. Aiden's stomach turned to ice. He stared at the bedroom door leading to the small living room and the only exit of his one-bedroom apartment. The deadbolt was locked, the chain secured. Still the handle rattled again. He did not move. He did not breathe. And slowly, the knocking stopped. The apartment fell silent. Aiden squeezed his eyes shut and yanked the covers over his head, heart hammering. The landlord's words replayed over and over in his mind like a chant. Pretend you're asleep. Pretend you're asleep. Eventually, exhaustion took him. He didn't even realize he had drifted off until the morning light burned through his cheap blinds and he awoke to find his front door unlocked, despite bolting it shut. The next morning, Aiden confronted the landlord, Mrs. Holloway, a woman in her 60s with cloudy blue eyes and a cigarette perpetually pinched between between her fingers, didn't even look surprised when he mentioned the knocking. "I told you not to answer." She exhaled smoke, the tip of her cigarette flaring in the dim hallway. "And you didn't, right?" "No," Aiden said. Mrs. Holloway nodded. "Then you're fine." His jaw clenched. "Someone tried to get in last night." She raised an eyebrow. "Did you check the peephole?" Aiden hesitated. He hadn't. The moment he heard the knocking, he hadn't dared to move. "If you don't look, it won't come inside," she said flatly. "If you ignore it, it leaves. But if you answer..." She didn't finish the sentence. Aiden shivered. That night he set up a camera. He had to know. He placed it directly across from the front door, ensuring it captured everything. Then he went to bed, phone clutched in his palm. 3:03 a.m. The knock came again. Knock. Then another. Knock. His fingers tightened around the phone. The air in the apartment felt heavier, colder. The old wooden door seemed to breathe, swelling with each creak of the building. The peephole was dark. And then the handle twisted. Aiden's blood turned to ice. The metal lock clicked, unlocking itself. The chain slid free. His stomach clenched, his limbs locked in place, terror pinning him to the mattress. Then silence. Aiden did not move. Minutes passed. His body ached from the tension, but he didn't dare shift. And eventually he drifted into a restless, uneasy sleep. The footage was waiting when he woke. Aiden sat at his desk, hands clammy as he clicked play. The grainy, dim-lit video showed his front door, locked and secured. 3:02 a.m. A soft static hum filled the background. The camera flickered. The knock came. Aiden inhaled sharply as he watched the lock turn on its own. The deadbolt twisted free. The chain slid, dangling loosely. The door opened, just a crack. And then something entered. The shape was wrong. A shadowy figure, humanoid but not. Its head was too tall, its limbs too thin. The thing did not step forward. It glided. It moved to the bedroom door. Aiden's stomach lurched as the figure stood there. It didn't touch the door. It didn't knock. It simply waited. Then the camera glitched. The final frame was of his bedroom, and the figure was inside, watching him sleep. Aiden barely functioned that morning. He couldn't stay here. He booked a hotel for the night, shoving clothes into a duffel bag. He'd leave, return in daylight to get the rest of his things. He just needed to survive one more night. That evening, he barricaded the door, deadbolt, chain, a chair against the handle. Then he curled into bed, forcing his body to still. 3:03 a.m. The knock came. Knock, knock. His throat tightened. The chair against the door shifted slightly. Aiden clenched his eyes shut. He didn't breathe. The air grew heavier. The blanket felt thinner. The knocking stopped. A moment passed. Then another. Then his phone vibrated. Aiden's blood ran cold. His trembling fingers reached for it. A notification from his security app. Motion detected. He swallowed hard and tapped the alert. Live feed loading. The video opened. His breath caught. The door was still shut. The barricade untouched. But the screen glitched. For half a second, the grainy frame cut to his bedroom, and Aiden saw himself lying in bed, eyes shut, and a figure standing over him. It was inside. His lungs locked. The footage was from 3 minutes ago, which meant the thing was still in the room with him, breathing, watching, waiting. The knocking never came again, but Aiden never left the apartment, because the next morning, when the landlord came to check, the front door was wide open, and the bed was empty. The only thing left was his phone. Screen cracked, still recording. The last video was still playing. A figure stood in the doorway. It knocked twice. Then it turned toward the camera and smiled. Daniel wiped his palms against his jeans before gripping the steering wheel. The car's interior smelled of fresh leather, the kind of artificial scent dealerships used to make everything feel new, even when it wasn't. The dashboard flickered to life, the digital display glowing with soft blue light. Then, without him touching a thing, GPS loading. A map appeared. The address was already set. Home, 23 miles. Daniel frowned. He hadn't entered anything. He hadn't even touched the damn screen. He glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting the rental guy to be smirking outside the office window, playing some kind of joke. But the lot was empty, dark under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe the car's system had accessed his phone somehow, synced with an app. Still, his stomach tightened as he put the car into drive. His Honda had died on him 5 miles outside town, and this had been the only rental agency nearby. The guy behind the counter had been off, too quiet, too watchful as he handed over the keys. Daniel shook the thought away. He was just exhausted. He needed to get home, crack open a beer, and forget this whole day. The road stretched empty as he pulled onto the highway. Streetlights whizzed past in a rhythmic glow. The car was smooth, too smooth, like it anticipated every move before he made it. Then the radio crackled on by itself. A song hummed through the speakers, soft, familiar. Daniel, my brother, you are older than me. His breath hitched. He hadn't heard that song in years. A childhood favorite. His mother used to play it in their old rust bucket of a station wagon, humming along as she drove him to school. His hands tensed around the wheel. Coincidence. That's all. His fingers reached toward the volume dial, but before he could touch it, the sound lowered on its own, fading to a ghostly whisper. Daniel exhaled sharply, shaking off the unease. Then he shifted in his seat and froze. The seat had already adjusted itself, perfectly, to his height, his posture, exactly how he would have said it himself. The hairs on his arms lifted, the AC switched on before he even reached for it. A cool, gentle blast, just how he liked it. Daniel swallowed. He wasn't imagining this. He tapped the GPS screen, attempting to clear the route. Reroute. Error. Route cannot be changed. His chest tightened. He pressed the button again. Error. A cold prickle ran down his spine. The road signs ahead were unfamiliar. Had he missed his exit? He reached for the turn signal, but before he could flick it, the doors locked with a sharp click. The GPS flickered. The display shifted. Destination. Completion. A burst of static filled the speakers. Then a voice. His voice. You shouldn't have left. We were waiting. Daniel's foot slammed the brakes. Nothing. The pedal wouldn't move. The speedometer ticked up. 40 mile per hour, 50 mile per hour, 70 mile per hour. The gas gauge flashed empty, yet the car accelerated. The road outside was no longer familiar. The landmarks were wrong. The exits, gone. His breath came fast, ragged. He grabbed the wheel, yanking hard to the right. The car didn't budge. The wheel fought back. The headlights ahead brightened. No, not headlights. People lining the road, standing, watching. A green road sign loomed ahead, glowing in the dark. Welcome back, Daniel. His chest seized. This wasn't real. This wasn't happening. He squeezed his eyes shut, opened them. The sign was still there. The people were still watching. The radio crackled. His own voice whispered again, "You were always coming back." Daniel screamed, fighting the wheel, kicking at the pedals. Nothing worked. The car was driving itself. The world outside warped, shifting, twisting. He swore he saw trees bending unnaturally, the sky darkening despite it being only 7:30. The GPS recalibrated. The address was no longer his home. It was somewhere else. somewhere he had been before, a place he had forgotten. The road dipped, curving toward a darkened tunnel. The walls were covered in something, words etched deep like claw marks. His name, over and over. Daniel, Daniel, Daniel. His pulse hammered. The tunnel loomed ahead. The car wouldn't stop. The last thing he saw before it swallowed him whole, his own reflection in the rearview mirror. Smiling, somewhere in the quiet night, the car slowed to a stop. The engine quieted. The doors unlocked with a gentle click. The driver's seat emptied itself. A moment passed. Then the GPS blinked once, then twice. A new address appeared, a new name, and the car waited for its next passenger. The end. The end. It was never there before. Elliot gripped the steering wheel, staring through the windshield at the house at the end of the road. A warm yellow glow spilled from its windows, cutting through the ink-black countryside. It looked lived in, safe even, but it wasn't on the map, and it wasn't supposed to be here. Jude leaned forward from the back seat. Tell me you guys see this. Nina exhaled sharply. She'd been quiet the whole drive, lost in the lull of the dark road stretching for miles. Now she sat up, hugging herself. It wasn't here before. Elliot tapped the screen of his phone, but there was no signal, no data. His GPS app showed a dead zone. Jude smirked. Maybe it's one of those places like, an urban legend thing. Elliot scowled. Like what? Phantom houses, time slips, that kind of thing. You hear about them online. Some guy's driving, takes the wrong turn, and ends up somewhere that shouldn't exist. Bullshit. Jude shrugged. Only one way to find out. He was out of the car before Elliot could argue, stepping onto the dirt road, crunching over gravel toward the front steps. The porch light flickered once. Elliot glanced at Nina, and she shook her head, but she was already unbuckling her seatbelt. The three of them stood in front of the house. Elliot still felt it, that wrongness, like static buzzing in his bones. But there was no reason to feel that way. The place looked normal, cozy even. Jude knocked. A moment later, the door creaked open, and a woman peered out. She was older, maybe in her 50s, dressed in a soft sweater, her face kind but distant, like she was focusing on something behind them, something they couldn't see. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. The warmth hit them instantly, curling around their skin, too thick for the season. The air smelled of chamomile and something sweeter, freshly baked bread. Elliot hesitated, but Jude was already inside, grinning. "See, normal house. I bet she has Wi-Fi." The woman smiled. "Tea." They sat in the living room, cups steaming in their hands. The woman moved gracefully, barely making a sound as she settled into her chair. The room was still, too still. No wind outside, no distant hum of passing cars. Nina shifted uncomfortably. "So, how long have you lived here?" The woman tilted her head. "A long time." Jude leaned in. "But this house, we didn't see it on the way in." "That's because," the woman said gently, "it wasn't here yet." Elliot checked his watch. 2:14 a.m. His stomach turned. Something was wrong. He tapped the glass. The second hand wasn't moving. The screen was frozen. No time. No signal. His pulse quickened. "Nina, what time do you have?" She checked her phone. Her face paled. "It's not working." Jude frowned and glanced at his own watch. "Okay, that's freaky." A soft chime echoed from deeper in the house. Jude stood up. "Where's the bathroom?" The woman pointed to a hallway. "Last door on the left." Elliot opened his mouth to protest, but Jude was already walking. His footsteps faded into the corridor. They waited and waited. Minutes passed. Too many minutes. Elliot stood Jude. Silence. Nina set her cup down carefully. Something's wrong. They walked to the hallway together. The door at the end stood open, a dark rectangle leading into nothing. Elliot swallowed and stepped inside. The room was empty. No sink, no toilet, no mirror, just smooth, blank walls. And no Jude. He turned, heart hammering. Jude. The door slammed shut. Nina screamed. Elliot grabbed the handle, twisting it hard, locked. Then, the woman sighed behind them. You shouldn't have come this way. The walls shifted. Elliot felt it. A subtle lurch, like the whole house had blinked. The hallway was gone. The doorway they had just entered was a flat wall. The woman was standing in the living room, her face flickering. Nina gasped. Elliot saw it too. For a split second there were multiple versions of her. Different ages, different faces, layered like a glitch in reality. Then she was just herself again, serene, watching them. Where's Jude? Elliot's voice came out hoarse. She didn't answer. Nina grabbed his arm. We need to go. Elliot nodded. They ran for the front door. It swung open into an endless black field. No road, no trees, just an expanse of nothing. Elliot stepped back. The porch was gone. The house hummed. And then Nina let go of his hand. He turned. She wasn't there, just empty space where she had been. His breath caught. He spun around wildly. Nina, the woman sighed again. You don't leave the same way you came. The walls trembled. The house flickered. The warmth turned cold. And then, Elliot woke up. He was in the driver's seat. The engine was off. The road was empty. Beside him, Nina blinked groggily. Jude was slumped in the back seat, snoring softly. Elliot's heart pounded. The house, where was the house? He turned to Nina. Do you remember? She stared at him, eyes unfocused, then shook her head. I think I fell asleep. Elliot exhaled shakily. He checked his watch. 2:14 a.m. His throat tightened. Then his phone buzzed. A new voicemail. Unknown number. He swallowed hard and pressed play. A whisper, distant, crawling into his ears. Come back tonight. The end. Liam woke up to the hum of fluorescent lights. The waiting room was pristine, too clean, like it had been freshly scrubbed and sealed away from time. Rows of plastic chairs lined the pale green walls, the cushions stiff and unyielding. A faint antiseptic scent lingered in the air, the kind that clung to your clothes and made your stomach churn with unease. The receptionist smiled at him. Doctor will see you soon. Liam rubbed his temples. His memory felt disjointed, like puzzle pieces jammed together in the wrong places. He didn't remember arriving, didn't remember making an appointment. Hell, he didn't even remember getting sick. Yet, he was here. He looked at the other patients. A woman in a blue dress sat stiffly in her chair, hands folded in her lap. A man in a suit stared at the floor, his fingers twitching. A small boy clutched a stuffed bear, rocking back and forth, whispering under his breath. None of them acknowledged him. A dull ache bloomed in his chest. How long had they been waiting? The clock on the wall read 3:07. Minutes passed, maybe hours. No one was called. Liam shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The receptionist hadn't looked away from him once. Her smile never faltered. Excuse me, he said, standing up. How long is the wait? Doctor will see you soon, she repeated. Her voice was flat, programmed. Liam frowned. He walked over to the table stacked with magazines. He picked one up, Time magazine, 1984. Brand new. No creases, no fading, no dust. The next one, Better Homes and Gardens, 1991. Fresh ink, glossy pages. smelled like it had been printed this morning. His throat tightened. He glanced back at the clock. 3:07. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. Okay, weird, but fine. He paced toward the door and grasped the handle. Locked. No, not locked. Sealed. No bolt, no keyhole, no mechanism at all. Just a solid slab of wood with no way to open it. Panic tickled at the edges of his mind. He turned back to the receptionist. I need to leave. Her head tilted slightly, like a curious bird. Her teeth were too white, too even. Doctor will see you soon. Liam sat down. He counted 17 slow breaths. Then he tried talking to the other patients. The woman in the blue dress didn't react. The man in the suit blinked once in 10 minutes. The child rocking back and forth whispered nonsense under his breath. His stuffed bear clutched tightly in his tiny hands. Then someone moved. A frail-looking man, his skin stretched thin over sharp cheekbones, lifted his head. His eyes were sunken, rimmed with dark hollows, lips cracked. When he spoke, his voice creaked like an old door hinge. I've been waiting since 1984. Liam's stomach dropped. The old man smiled weakly. Doctor will see you soon. The words didn't sound like his own. They sounded borrowed. Liam bolted from his chair. He slammed his fists against the door. Hello, let me out. No response. He turned, wild-eyed, searching for a window, a vent, anything. The walls were perfectly smooth. No seams, no gaps, just the waiting room. His breath came in fast, sharp bursts. He clawed at the walls, digging his nails into the paint, trying to peel it away. Underneath was nothing. Not drywall, not brick, not wood. Just emptiness. A voice whispered behind him. Your turn now. Standing, she had never stood before. Liam turned slowly. Her smile had grown, not metaphorically, literally. Her mouth stretched wide beyond what was humanly possible, the corners splitting too far up her cheeks. The rows of perfect white teeth went on forever. The room had dimmed, the fluorescence flickering, buzzing like dying flies. The door to the doctor's office creaked open. Beyond it, darkness, a void. The receptionist raised a hand, pointing at him. Liam Carter, she called, her voice layered, fractured, as if 100 voices spoke through her at once. Liam's legs refused to move. The other patients turned toward him, their heads rotating too smoothly, too in sync. They were waiting. Their lips moved in unison. Doctor will see you soon. Liam staggered backward. No, I'm not. I don't belong here. The receptionist's jaw unhinged. Her voice rippled through the room. You checked in. You must check out. The darkness beyond the door pulled at him. It wasn't like falling. It was like being unmade. Like the concept of Liam Carter was being gently, methodically erased. The patients watched, unblinking. Liam tried to fight against the pull, but it was inevitable. This was always going to happen. He had always been here. He was just waiting for his name to be called. The last thing he saw was the clock ticking forward. 3:08. The waiting room was pristine. Rows of plastic chairs lined the pale green walls. The magazines were crisp and new. The receptionist smiled at the new arrival. Doctor will see you soon. The end. The first time Eric noticed it, he was brushing his teeth. It wasn't obvious, just a tiny glitch, a hiccup in reality that his tired mind almost brushed past. He spat into the sink, rinsed his mouth, wiped his face. His reflection did the same. Almost. There was a delay, barely a fraction of a second. Not enough to be sure. Maybe I imagined it, he thought. The next night, it happened again. He was staring into the mirror, pressing 2 fingers into his cheek, inspecting a shaving nick. His reflection mirrored him, exactly as it should. But when he pulled his hand away, the mirrored Eric lingered just a moment too long, just long enough for him to notice. He felt his stomach twist. He lifted a hand. The mirror lifted its own. He turned his head side to side. Nothing strange. His shoulders relaxed and he let out a laugh. I need more sleep. And that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The 3rd time it happened in public. Eric was at a department store walking past a long stretch of mirrors. The place was mostly empty, save for a bored-looking cashier tapping on her phone. Then he saw it. His reflection wasn't keeping up, not like before, not a tiny, almost imagined lag. This time it had stopped moving entirely. He was still walking, but the Eric inside the mirror wasn't. It was staring at him. A cold, creeping sensation crawled up his spine. He turned his head sharply. His reflection did not. Then, with the slow inevitability of something watching from behind a glass wall, the mirrored Eric grinned. Eric staggered backward, nearly knocking over a rack of scarves. His reflection, suddenly obedient again, followed. His pulse hammered in his ears. Leave. He walked out of the store without buying anything. He tried to forget. He told himself he was imagining things. But the mirrors knew. Now whenever he passed by them, his reflection seemed just a little bit wrong. Sometimes he caught glimpses of himself in mirrors he wasn't standing in front of. The bathroom mirror, when he walked past the open door. The reflection on his phone screen when it went dark. The black television screen where his own face stared out, not blinking when he did. One night, he covered the dresser mirror with a sheet. He woke up to find it removed. His stomach twisted. He turned, staring at his own face. It looked normal, but something in his eyes didn't. The next night, he covered every mirror in the apartment. He triple-checked. When he woke, they were all uncovered. He started avoiding mirrors, but they wouldn't avoid him. In the silvered glass behind the bar downtown, the puddle in the street at night, glinting under neon light, the reflection in a car window as he passed, watching him, grinning at something he didn't find funny. Then the whisper came. It happened in the bathroom. He had just finished washing his hands when the lights flickered. The air thickened, and the mirror spoke. I'm ready. Eric stumbled back, slamming into the towel rack. His reflection did not move. It only smiled. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, everything felt wrong. His body was too heavy. The air around him felt thick, syrupy. He moved slowly, like he was swimming through reality. And then he saw it. He turned to the mirror. His reflection stared back, but this time it wasn't lagging. It was moving first. Eric lifted a trembling hand. His reflection was faster. The grin spread across its face before he had even thought of smiling. No. His heart slammed against his ribs. His fingers tingled. And in that moment, he understood. He wasn't looking at his reflection. He was the reflection, trapped behind the glass. Panic overtook him. He threw himself at the glass, slamming his fists against it. No sound. His screams didn't escape the mirror. His breath hitched. His pulse pounded in his ears. The Eric on the other side stepped back. He stretched, flexing his fingers, Eric's fingers. It wasn't watching anymore, it was living. Eric slammed against the glass again. He tried to pound on it, to break it, to get back, but nothing moved. Nothing but him, behind the mirror, watching forever. He doesn't know how long he's been here. Time doesn't pass, not behind the glass. He watches himself, his other self, move around his apartment, answering calls, eating meals, laughing at jokes Eric never told. It wears his face, it wears his life, and no one knows. Eric pounds on the mirror again. The doppelganger pauses. For a split second, its eyes flicker toward the mirror. A slow, knowing grin spreads across its face. It sees him. It always did. It always will. And one day, when it's done with Eric's life, it will find someone new. The end. The first time Julia saw the wrecked car, she thought she was imagining things. It was parked across the street from her apartment, angled oddly against the curb, its crumpled front end like a caved-in skull. The windshield was shattered, caked with spiderweb fractures, and the hood was dented deep enough to suggest something had been inside when it collapsed. She hadn't thought much about it. Just a junked vehicle left by a tow truck, or a vandalized wreck no one had bothered to move. But then she noticed something else. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat, the shadowy outline of a figure perfectly still, watching. A chill pricked her skin. She blinked, and the seat was empty. Just the illusion of shadows, she told herself. It had to be. Still, she locked the door twice that night. The hospital had called it a miracle. A head-on collision with an 18-wheeler should have left her dead. Instead, she'd crawled out of the wreckage with not a single scratch. No broken bones, no internal bleeding. Just some mild disorientation and a concussion, but even the doctors had seemed puzzled. Her parents had come to pick her up the next morning, all smiles and relief. Her mother hugged her too tightly, and her father squeezed her shoulder just a little too long. And yet, something was wrong. Her mom smelled different. It wasn't the soft floral perfume Julia had always associated with her. This one was sharper, something she would never wear. Her father had a scar on his left hand, a thick, jagged line across the knuckles. Julia had known this man her entire life, and she had never seen it before. "Everything okay, honey?" her mom asked when she hesitated. Julia forced a smile. "Yeah, just shaken up." At home, the wrongness grew. Her apartment wasn't quite the same. Her bookshelf sat against the wrong wall. Her toothbrush was blue, but she had always bought green. The framed photo of her and Claire, the one taken at a music festival in college, was missing. The more she looked, the worse it got. She called Claire for comfort. No answer. She texted, "I just got out of the hospital. Can we talk?" Claire responded an hour later, "Julia, we haven't spoken in years." The wrecked car appeared again the next night. This time, it was parked outside the gas station near her work. Same crushed hood, same broken windshield, same shadow sitting in the driver's seat. A bolt of fear spiked through her. She stepped forward, breath shallow, telling herself it was a coincidence. Just a junk car someone had moved. Just a trick of the light. But as she stared, the shadow inside moved, a slow, deliberate tilt of the head, like it was looking directly at her. She stumbled back, nearly dropping her phone. Blink, the seat was empty. She hurried home, locked the door, and checked every window. Then she searched online for any accident reports from 2 nights ago. Her fingers trembled as she read. Fatal car crash on Route 7. Victim identified as Julia Martinez, age 27. The date, the night of the accident. The air turned suffocating. This had to be a mistake. She called the hospital. They had no record of her. She called the paramedics. They had no record of treating her. Her hands shook as she dialed Claire. This time Claire picked up. Her voice was trembling. "Julia, you died." Julia didn't remember running to Claire's house, but suddenly she was standing on her doorstep, pounding on the door. Claire's face was pale when she answered. "I was at your funeral," she whispered. "I saw your body. I saw them lower your coffin." "That's not possible," Julia snapped. Claire hesitated, then pulled out her phone, scrolled through old messages. The last text Julia had sent her, 5 years ago. Before Julia could speak, headlights flared behind them, the wrecked car, sitting in Claire's driveway, and this time the driver's door creaked open. Julia turned and saw herself, not quite her. The figure that stepped out of the car was wrong. Its bones jutted at unnatural angles, and its skin sagged where flesh had been broken. Its mouth was split down one side, a permanent gaping wound. It staggered toward her, dragging one foot behind it, as if it had been crushed in the accident. It smelled like damp earth and blood. Julia backed away. The thing spoke in her own voice. "This is my life." Her skull pulsed with pain. Memories fractured. The accident. She never actually got out of the car. She was supposed to die. Her chest clenched. Her fingers cracked like brittle glass. The world shifted, colors warping, buildings bending inward. Her skin started peeling away in translucent sheets. Claire screamed. The broken Julia reached out. "You have to take your place." The next morning, police found a body inside the wrecked car. The victim, Julia Martinez. Her skin was shriveled, her eyes vacant, like she had been dead for weeks. The wreck was finally towed away, and somewhere across the city, a woman woke up in her apartment. She stretched, exhaled, but something was off. Her bookshelf sat against the wrong wall. Her toothbrush was the wrong color. That night, she looked out her window and saw a wrecked car parked outside. The shadow inside tilted its head, and the cycle began again. James wasn't looking for anything in particular when he stepped into the thrift shop. Just something weird, something nostalgic, one of those pointless purchases that made for a good story later. That's when he saw it. The phone sat on a dusty shelf, tucked between a broken radio and a stack of VHS tapes. An old landline, the kind he hadn't seen in years. Cream-colored plastic, coiled cord, big square buttons yellowed with age. A joke purchase. Something retro to sit on his desk. That night, on a whim, he plugged it in. It rang immediately. James froze. The cord was loose, barely connected to the wall. There was no way anyone had this number. No one even knew he had the phone. The ringing continued, shrill and insistent. Finally, hesitantly, he picked up. "Hello." A long pause. Then a voice he recognized too well, his own. "James," the voice whispered, "listen to me carefully. The call is coming from next year." James frowned. "What?" His voice sounded urgent, strained. "Tomorrow take Green Street to work, not Main." A soft click. The line went dead. James sat there, the receiver still pressed to his ear, heart pounding. His own voice had just spoken to him, given him advice, a warning, ridiculous. Except the next morning he turned on the news. There had been a pileup on Main Street, 6 cars, 2 fatalities. His stomach clenched. He had taken green. The next night the phone rang again. James hesitated this time, but he answered. "Don't eat at Giuseppe's tomorrow," his future self said. "Food poisoning outbreak." James had planned to get lunch there. He didn't. The next day, a dozen people went to the hospital with salmonella. The calls became routine. Each night, the voice on the other end gave him warnings, advice, little tweaks to his future. Accept the second job offer, not the first. Leave your apartment at 2:45 today. Trust me. Don't answer the call. You'll get at noon tomorrow." James obeyed. At first it felt like a gift, like he had a secret weapon, an invisible guide shaping his future. He stopped questioning it until the warnings changed. One night, the voice was different, quieter. "James," it whispered, "do not go outside tomorrow, no matter what happens, no matter what you hear." James tensed. Why? "They're watching." A long silence. Then, in a voice barely audible over the static, "They know you're listening." Click. James barely slept. He left the lights on, checked the locks twice. The next day he obeyed. He stayed inside. At 3:12 a.m., knocking came at his door. Soft, insistent. James froze. His apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. The knock came again. He crept toward the peephole. A figure stood in the hallway, still, unmoving. James's phone rang. He turned, hands clammy, and picked it up. "James," his voice whispered, "do not answer the door." The knocking stopped. After that night, the calls became worse. The messages grew garbled, distorted. Sometimes it was his voice, sometimes it was just breathing, sometimes static. One night, the voice on the other end barely sounded human. "They know you're listening. Don't answer again." James tried to stop. He unplugged the phone, shoved it in a drawer. At midnight, it rang anyway. He answered. Screaming filled his ear. Not words, just screaming. James dropped the receiver, staggered back, but the sound didn't stop. It didn't come from the phone anymore. It was coming from inside the apartment. The final call came 2 nights later. James didn't want to pick up, but he did. The voice on the other end was barely a whisper now. I should never have answered. James gritted his teeth. "Who are you?" A long pause. Then, "I am what's left of you." Click. The dial tone hummed. James stood there, gripping the receiver, heart pounding. The silence stretched. Then the phone rang again. The caller ID displayed 2 words. James didn't move. His fingers clenched the receiver so tightly his knuckles turned white. The phone answered itself. A distorted, rasping voice whispered, "Welcome to next year, James." They're already inside. The lights flickered. The door creaked open. The line went to static. The end. Olivia dreamt of the house again. A sprawling Victorian mansion, black against a sky of ink, its peaked roof and filigreed balconies looming like the bones of something long dead. The porch sagged under the weight of time, and all the windows were dark except one, always one, and the door, the locked door. She stood before it, barefoot, her fingers hovering inches from the brass knob. The whispers came from behind it, as they always did, urgent, incomplete. Come closer, come closer. She swallowed, heartbeat drumming in her ears. In every dream, she woke before she could turn the knob, but not tonight. She curled her fingers around it, feeling the chill of metal. Then she woke up. Her body lurched forward, gasping, the sheets damp with sweat. A sharp pain bloomed along her arm, and when she looked, her stomach flipped. Scratches. Long, fresh welts ran from her elbow to her wrist, the kind you'd get if you ran through brambles. She flung the covers off. Her feet were dirty. She was shaking as she swung her legs over the side of the bed. This was getting worse. First, it was just the dreams. Then the whispers lingered after she woke. But this, the scratches, the dirt, she felt used like something had puppeted her in the night and discarded her back in bed before dawn. She needed to tell someone. "Olivia, you look like hell," Jen said, stirring sugar into her coffee. "Are you sleeping at all?" They sat across from each other at the diner, Olivia nursing a cup of black coffee she barely touched. The dream still clung to her, its residue thick in her head. Olivia hesitated. I keep dreaming about this house. Jen arched a brow. Like your old childhood home, or something freaky. Freaky, Olivia admitted. She glanced at the window where the town stretched beyond, too bright, too normal. It's old, huge, Victorian style, I think. Everything is empty except this one door. It's locked. I don't know why, but it feels important. Jen's smile faded. What does it look like? Olivia described it. Down to the creaking porch and the warped wood of the locked door. With each word, Jen's face drained of color. Liv, she whispered. That house is real. Olivia stared at her. You just described the Holloway house, the one outside of town. A cold weight dropped into Olivia's stomach. That can't be. They found bodies there, Liv. Missing people. The cops never figured out what happened. They just turned up inside. Locked inside rooms with no way in or out. No forced entry. No signs of a struggle. Just gone and then there. Goosebumps prickled Olivia's arms. How do you know this? She asked. Because when we were in high school, some kids broke in for a dare. One of them said he heard something behind that locked door. Said he felt something watching him through the keyhole. Jen shuddered. A week later he was gone. Just disappeared. Olivia exhaled sharply. And you think what? That I'm dreaming about a real place because... What? It's calling me. Jen didn't answer, but she didn't laugh either. That night, Olivia didn't fight sleep. She needed answers. She parked just outside the rusted iron gates, her headlights cutting long shadows across the unkempt lawn. The Holloway house loomed exactly as she had seen it. Even in the waking world, it felt like something out of a nightmare. She forced herself forward. Every step up the porch creaked the way it did in her dreams. The door was unlocked. The inside smelled of dust and time. Moonlight poured through broken windows, illuminating warped floorboards and peeling wallpaper. The house was empty, just like in the dream, except for one door. Her chest tightened. The locked door stood at the end of the hall. Dark wood warped with age, brass handle gleaming in the dim light. And she wasn't alone. The whispers began immediately. A rush of voices slithering into her skull, writhing around her thoughts. Come closer, closer. Olivia's breath came fast. She reached for the handle. The whispers stopped. For the first time in all her dreams, there was silence. Then from the other side, a voice. I've been waiting for you. A cold breath gusted against the crack of the door. The handle rattled as if whatever was inside had pressed against it, desperate to get out. Olivia's legs locked. She knew that if she turned the knob, the world as she understood it would shatter. Something was in there. Something that knew her. Something that had been inside her dreams. Inside her. Her throat closed. She backed away. The door banged violently, shaking in its frame. The house groaned, and the air thickened, heavy with something unseen. Olivia turned and ran. She woke in bed. Her sheets were twisted, her body damp with sweat. But when she looked down, her feet were clean. No dirt, no scratches. She exhaled a long, shaking breath. It was over. She never dreamed of the house again, but sometimes late at night, just as she was drifting off, she thought she heard something deep in her head. A whisper. Next time you'll open the door. The end. Mark first noticed it in the office bathroom. The fluorescent lights hummed dully overhead as he washed his hands, but his shadow on the tiled floor lagged behind his movements. When he turned off the faucet, it hesitated for a split second before following. His breath hitched, a trick of the light, a delay in his brain's processing. But as he dried his hands, his shadow flickered, disappearing completely for a moment before snapping back into place. He stumbled backward, heart thudding. Something wasn't right. At first, he dismissed it. Shadows can look strange under certain lights, right? But soon, it wasn't just in the bathroom. Walking home at dusk, he saw his shadow stretch unnaturally long on the sidewalk. Too long. Even stranger, when he stopped, it kept moving. Just a fraction of a second too late, but enough for his stomach to tighten in unease. At work, he tested it in his office under the dim glow of his desk lamp. He raised a hand. His shadow followed. He lowered it. The shadow obeyed. He tried again, slower this time. His arm fell. His shadow's arm remained raised. Mark's breath came shallow as he forced himself to blink, to look again. It was fine now, back in place as if nothing had happened. But he knew what he saw. It was lagging, deliberately. The days passed and the wrongness grew. Sometimes he would catch it standing still while he moved. Other times it flickered and blurred at the edges, its movements choppy, like a poorly rendered animation. One evening he dropped his phone and bent down to pick it up, only to realize his shadow wasn't bending with him. It stood there, upright, looming over him as if it had been waiting for something. He barely slept that night. Then, one night, he woke to a deep, stomach-turning silence. Something was wrong. His bedroom was dark, but moonlight filtered in through the blinds, casting familiar shapes across the walls. Except, his shadow wasn't where it should be. It was stretched thin and unnaturally tall, reaching across the ceiling, its fingers extended toward the door. Mark's body turned ice cold. Slowly, carefully, he sat up. His movements were sluggish, as if something heavy was pressing against his skin. He forced his trembling hand toward his bedside lamp. Click. The room flooded with light. His shadow snapped back into place. Mark sucked in a shuddering breath, pressing his palm against his chest to steady his heartbeat. He wasn't crazy. He knew what he saw. His shadow was trying to leave without him. At work the next morning, Mark expected someone to comment on how terrible he looked. Instead, he was met with something worse. His co-workers didn't react to him at all. He passed his cubicle neighbor, Sarah, offering a weak hey. She didn't respond. She didn't even glance up. Confused, he tried again, clearing his throat. Nothing. Even when he waved a hand in front of her face, she only frowned slightly as if swatting away an invisible fly. Mark's stomach twisted. He turned to another coworker. Dan? No response. No one spoke to him. No one saw him. It was as if he wasn't there. Dread settled deep in his bones. Desperate, he pulled up the office security feed on his computer, rewinding to earlier that morning when he had walked in. The footage loaded. He leaned in, scanning the screen. There were his co-workers, entering, chatting, going about their routines. And then, nothing. Mark wasn't there, but his shadow was. It moved across the floor, detached from any source, stepping into the light as if it had always belonged there. His chest seized. He slammed the laptop shut, pulse hammering. This wasn't just his imagination. His shadow was living his life without him. That night, Mark sat in his dimly lit apartment, every muscle coiled in fear. He didn't dare turn off the lights. Then, from the corner of his vision, he saw it, his shadow, not on the wall, not on the floor, standing, facing him. Mark couldn't move. The shadow cocked its head as if studying him, and then it smiled. Not a trick of the light, not a fleeting illusion, a smile. And before Mark could scream, it stepped forward into the light. The end. The house sat at the edge of town, past a cluster of gas stations and a single diner. It wasn't much. Yellow paint flaking off wooden siding, a screen door that whined when touched, but it was cheap, and Emily Harper needed cheap. The landlord, a middle-aged woman with a lined face and a voice like brittle leaves, handed over the keys. "You read the rules?" Emily nodded. The woman hesitated, then tapped the last line with a chipped fingernail. "Do not ask about the previous tenants. People come and go," the landlord said. "No sense digging up old dirt." Emily gave her a tight smile, tucked the rules into her bag, and stepped inside. For the first few nights, the house was just a house. The pipes groaned when she showered, the fridge hummed too loud, and the floors creaked under shifting temperatures. Normal things, until they weren't. Emily woke at 2:38 a.m. to the sound of footsteps, soft, measured, in the hallway just outside her room. She sat up, heart hammering. The hallway light, one she hadn't turned on, cast a dim glow under the door. Was someone inside? She slid out of bed, pressed her ear to the wood. Silence, no movement, no breathing. The door handle was cold as she turned it. The hallway was empty. A draft stirred the curtains in the living room. Had she left the window open? She checked. Locked. The air smelled faintly of perfume. Not hers. She pulled out her phone and checked the screen out of habit. A new photo sat in her camera roll, a blurry shot of the bedroom mirror. She hadn't taken it. The house kept nudging her. A drawer opened when she swore it had been shut. Her shoes moved an inch too far from the door. One morning, she found her suitcase unzipped, clothes neatly refolded inside. Another night, she walked into the kitchen and smelled smoke. The stove burners were on, glowing red. She hadn't used them all day. That same night, she found a small silver key under the couch. Not a house key, not hers. She dreamt of water running somewhere in the walls, voices behind them, just out of reach. Her phone filled with more photos, one of a lace curtain that wasn't in the house, another of a closet filled with unfamiliar clothes. The next morning she found a dress in her closet. It smelled of old perfume. Under the floorboard near the bed, Emily found the newspaper. It was old, yellowed at the edges, folded as if someone had hidden it. Her fingers trembled as she smoothed it flat. Missing woman last seen in rental home. Her stomach clenched. The photo, the face, was hers. No, not possible. She read the date, 3 years ago. The air shifted behind her, a whisper. She turned sharply. Nothing. Just the house, settling. She forced a laugh, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She tried to leave the house. The front door wouldn't open. The key didn't fit anymore. She tried the back. The knob turned, but the door refused to budge, as if something was bracing against it on the other side. Windows. Stuck. Her phone. No service. She wasn't locked in. The house just wouldn't let her go. That night, the phone rang. Not hers. The old phone she had found in the nightstand drawer. She stared at it. It hadn't worked before. No dial tone, no power. It rang again. Her hand trembled as she picked up. Silence. Then, a voice, her voice, but wrong. Distorted. You're almost gone. A click. Darkness swallowed the room. The mirrors flickered. She saw herself standing there, but it wasn't her. A woman with her face but hollowed out, blurred at the edges like an overexposed photo. The reflection reflection raised a hand. Emily didn't. The walls whispered, "You are home now." She scrambled backward, heart slamming against her ribs. She turned toward the bedroom door, but it had changed. Not her bedroom anymore. The hallway stretched dark and endless. From the shadows, figures shifted, indistinct, moving toward her. She ran, but the house ran with her. Emily woke up in bed. Morning sunlight poured through the windows. Had it been a dream, a hallucination? She bolted upright, skin clammy. Her phone. Where was her phone? On the nightstand. She snatched it up. No missed calls, no photos. Had she imagined? Her eyes landed on the floorboard. The newspaper was gone. A knock at the front door made her flinch. She hesitated, then walked to the peephole. A woman stood outside, holding a suitcase. Emily stepped back, a cold hand closing around her throat. The walls murmured. A smile spread across the landlord's face as she handed the new tenant the keys. "Read the house rules," she said. The door closed. The house was ready again. The end. Leah found the ID card under the floorboard while unpacking. The apartment was still half empty. Cardboard boxes stacked by the door, the air thick with the scent of dust and wood polish. She had only lifted the board because one corner was loose, just enough to slip her fingers underneath. The card had been wedged deep inside, the plastic warped from age, the name printed in faded ink, Anna Keller. But the photo, Leah stared. It was her face. Same brown eyes, same slightly uneven lips. The only difference was the name. She turned the card over in her hands, her pulse tightening. An old ID from a local university. The expiration date was from 5 years ago. It made no sense. Maybe someone who looked like her had lived here before. A coincidence. That was all. She tossed the card onto the counter and got back to unpacking. The first oddity came that night. She was brushing her teeth when she noticed her reflection didn't quite match her movements. It was small, barely noticeable, but she was certain she had turned her head a fraction of a second before the mirror version did. She leaned in, her breath fogging the glass. Her reflection did the same. Normal, nothing wrong. Still, a strange unease curled inside her as she flicked off the light. The next morning, her bank app didn't recognize her password. She tried again and again. A system error, maybe. She clicked the forgot password option. The screen asked for her username. She typed it in. User not found. A cold dread slid down her spine. She grabbed her phone and called the bank's customer service line. The hold music crackled before an operator answered. "Can I help you? Yes, I can't seem to access my account. The system says my username doesn't exist." "Of course I can assist you with that. What's your full name?" "Leah Harper." A brief pause. Keys clacking in the background. Then, "I'm sorry, we don't have an account under that name." Leah's stomach dropped. "That's impossible. I've had an account with you for years." "Are you sure you're calling the right bank?" Her hands were shaking. "Yes, can you check again?" Another pause. "I'm sorry, ma'am. There's no record of you in our system." The line went dead. She checked her call history. The number was gone, like she had never called at all. That night she found the message on the mirror. "You took my life." The words were faint, traced into the fog from her shower. Leah wiped a trembling hand over the glass. Nothing. Just condensation. A joke. A hallucination. She was alone. She went to bed with the lights on. The next day her phone contacts were empty. No texts, no calls. She tried dialing her best friend Melissa. The line rang once, hello. Relief flooded her. Oh, thank God, Melissa. I think something's wrong with my phone. All my contacts disappeared. A pause. Who is this? Leah. Stop. It's me. I'm sorry. I don't know Aaliyah. Her breath hitched. Melissa, what are you talking about? We've been friends since college. You must have the wrong number. Click. The call disconnected. Leah stared at the screen. She had called the right number. She checked her social media next. Her profile was still there. Same photos, same posts, except all the comments were from strangers. People she had never met. The pictures looked wrong too. She was there, but in places she didn't recognize. Standing beside people she had never seen before. She scrolled feverishly, heart hammering, until she reached her most recent photo. A selfie she had taken last week in her new apartment. The caption was the same. The date was the same. But the face in the photo wasn't hers. The voicemail came that night. It was her own voice. I'm coming home, get out. The message played twice. Leah sat frozen, phone gripped in her hands. The voice was hers, the same tone, the same inflections, but she'd never recorded it. She played it again. I'm coming home, get out. Her stomach twisted. Was someone in her apartment? She checked the doors. The locks were still bolted. No windows were open. She was alone. Then why did she feel watched? The next morning her key didn't fit the lock. Leah jiggled it, turned it over. It was the same key. She knocked. The door opened. She was standing there, looking back at herself. Leah stumbled back, breath seizing in her throat. The woman at the door was identical to her. Same hair, same eyes. The only difference was the way she smiled. Calm, certain, like she had been expecting this. Can I help you? The doppelganger asked. Leah's pulse pounded. This is my apartment. The woman tilted her head. I think you're mistaken. No, I live here. I signed the lease. I moved in last week. Do you have proof? Leah dug into her pocket, hands shaking, and pulled out her ID. She held it up, see? The woman looked at it. Then she smiled wider. But that's not your name. Leah's gaze dropped to the ID card in her hand. The name on it wasn't Leah Harper. It was Anna Keller. Her throat clenched. No, that's not right. I think you should leave now. Leah's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The world around her flickered. Her memories blurred. Her childhood home. Her parents' faces. Her own reflection. Was it ever real? Was she ever real? The doppelganger stepped back inside. Her apartment. Her life. The last thing Leah saw was the door closing in her face. The next morning, another woman moved in. She found an old ID card under the floorboard. The name was different, but the photo was hers. The end. The hotel clerk hesitated before handing Marco the key. You have to leave before sunrise. Marco chuckled. That a company policy or just a friendly warning? The clerk's face didn't change, neither. Just a fact. Marco glanced at the brass key in his hand. It felt cold, almost wet, like it had been resting in ice water. The tag read room 306. Something about the number felt wrong, though he couldn't place why. I'll be out first thing, Marco reassured the clerk. The clerk just nodded, eyes downcast, as if this conversation had already been forgotten. Room 306 was ordinary. The bed was neatly made. The television remote sat untouched on the nightstand, and the curtains were drawn against the city lights outside. A smell lingered in the air, old, stale, like the place hadn't been lived in for a long time. Marco tossed his suitcase onto the bed inside. It had been a long drive, and this was just one more anonymous stop in a life full of them. He showered, checked his emails, and set an alarm for 5:30 a.m. A few hours of sleep, then back on the road. At exactly 3 a.m., something woke him. A sound. Muffled voices, whispering. Marco sat up, heart pounding. He turned to the door where the voices seemed to seep through the wood, pressing against it. Slowly he climbed out of bed and walked toward the peephole. Only darkness, not the dim glow of a hallway, not even the outline of a shadow, just nothing. A low static hum filled the room. Marco turned, just as the television clicked on by itself. The screen showed security camera footage of room 306, his room. In the grainy black and white feed, Marco was there, lying in bed. But he wasn't asleep. He was standing, staring directly at the camera. Marco's breath caught. He was right here, watching this unfold in real time. But on the screen, he was someone else, a version of himself he didn't recognize. And then the figure in the footage tilted its head, as if sensing Marco's gaze. A slow smile spread across its face. Marco lunged for the remote, pressing buttons, but the screen wouldn't turn off. Then from the hallway, a slow knock. His instincts screamed, "Don't open the door." But Marco wasn't the kind of guy who ignored reality just because it didn't make sense. He took a deep breath, grabbed his phone, and moved toward the door. His fingers brushed the handle, and suddenly, he wasn't holding the door anymore. He was standing at the window, staring out. But there was no street, no buildings, no headlights, just an endless yawning blackness stretching beyond where the city should be. Something in the darkness shifted, a shape, no, a presence, watching. Marco stumbled back, hitting the bed. His phone screen was blank, no service, no clock, as if time itself had stopped. He bolted for the door, gripping the handle, and it wouldn't open. The whispers grew louder, now inside the room. The walls began to fade, turning a translucent, watery gray. Through them, Marco could see other rooms, layered over his own, like 1,000 versions of room 306 stacked on top of each other. Some were empty, some weren't. In one, a woman clawed at the walls, mouth open in a silent scream. In another, a man sat on the bed, head in his hands, unmoving. Marco turned toward the television. The footage had changed. Now it showed the lobby. The clerk staring blankly at the desk, and past him, where the front door should have been, bricked over. Marco's heartbeat slammed against his ribs. The entrance was gone. Something whispered behind him. Too late. Marco spun around and saw himself, not on the television, not in the reflection of the window, standing right there. His double was paler, thinner, his eyes sunken and hollow. He wore the same clothes Marco had put on before bed, but they looked older, as if they'd been worn for years. The double smiled. "I stayed too long," he whispered. "You did too." Marco backed away, his throat locking in terror. The air grew thin, the walls nearly transparent now, revealing layer upon layer of forgotten guests, all trapped in rooms that no longer existed. Marco bolted. His feet pounded against the floor as he sprinted toward the stairwell, only to find himself back in room 306. The room was undoing itself, peeling away like sheets of paper. His double watched, unmoving. "You're just a moment," it whispered. And moments fade. The walls vanished. The whispers swallowed him whole. And then, nothing. Morning. The hotel lobby hummed with the quiet chatter of new guests checking in. A businessman approached the front desk, rolling his suitcase behind him. "I need a room for the night." The clerk smiled. "Of course, just need to see some ID." The businessman handed it over. As the clerk typed his information, the businessman glanced at the room keys behind the desk. "What's the best available room?" The clerk hesitated. Let's see. Room 305 is available." "What about 306? The businessman asked. The clerk frowned. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't have a room 306. The businessman squinted at the key rack. Sure enough, between 35 and 307, there was an empty space. A cold shiver ran down his spine. Behind him, a faint sound. The murmur of a whisper, just out of earshot. The businessman turned, but there was nothing there. Just the hallway, stretching dark and silent beyond the lobby's glow. A security monitor flickered behind the desk. For a split second, on the grainy black and white screen, a figure appeared, standing in the hallway, just beyond the light, watching, and then it was gone. The end. Claire Conroy hadn't been back to Black Hollow in 10 years, but when her grandmother passed, duty dragged her home like an iron chain. The cemetery smelled like damp earth and something faintly sour. Rows of headstones stretched into the distance, but something about them felt off. As Claire placed roses by her grandmother's grave, her eyes drifted across the names. They're not where they should be. She swore her grandfather's stone had been beside her grandmother's when she was a kid. Now it sat 4 rows away, tilted at an odd angle, the dates barely legible. She walked through the rows, feeling a growing unease. Some of the graves seemed shuffled. "Can I help you, miss?" Claire turned. The caretaker, an old man with deep-set eyes, leaned on his shovel. "The graves," she said. "They're in different places, aren't they?" His lips thinned. "You ought to let the dead rest, ma'am. Some things ain't meant to be noticed." Before she could press, he turned and shuffled away. That night, Claire lay awake in her childhood bedroom, the walls still covered in faded floral wallpaper. The house smelled the same, dusty, faintly of cinnamon. At 2:33 a.m., she awoke to the sound of digging. She crept to the window, heart thudding. Down in the cemetery, silhouetted figures stood in the mist, shovels working. They were digging up fresh graves. She watched as they switched coffins, dragging them from one hole to another. Her breath caught in her throat. One of them, an old man with hunched shoulders, looked up, right at her. Claire dropped to the floor, her pulse hammered as she crawled away from the window. The next morning, the town felt wrong. Her Aunt Marion was making coffee when Claire entered the kitchen. "Did you hear anything last night?" Claire asked. Marion gave her a blank look. "What do you mean?" "The graveyard. There were people moving coffins." Marion laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're imagining things, sweetheart." Claire studied her aunt's face. Something was off. The laugh lines at the corners of her mouth were deeper. The mole on her left cheek was gone. And then Marion said something that made Claire's stomach flip inside out. "You used to love coming here as a little girl, Claire. You and your brother." Claire's hands went cold. "I don't." Her voice cracked. "I don't have a brother." Marion frowned, as if she were the one confused. "Of course you do. Danny, he lives in Chicago." Claire shoved back from the table. "No, I don't." "Oh, sweetheart, you're just tired. I'll call Danny later. He'll be so happy to hear from you." Claire stumbled out of the house, her breath coming in sharp gasps. She drove to the town archives. The records room smelled like mildew and old paper. She pulled up the burial logs, her fingers shaking. Her grandmother's name was there, but it hadn't always been. Her grave used to belong to someone else. Claire flipped to birth records. Her own name stared back at her, but beneath Mother's name it wasn't her mom listed. It was someone she'd never heard of. A chill crawled up her spine. At that moment, an envelope slid under the door. Claire turned, heart pounding. The hallway was empty. She picked up the envelope with numb fingers. Inside was a single scrap of paper. If you remember, they'll come for you next. That night, she sat in her car outside the cemetery gripping a flashlight. At 2:33 a.m., the digging began again. She crept closer, the damp earth squelching beneath her shoes. The figures worked quickly, switching the coffins between plots, their movements precise. And then she saw something that made her blood turn to ice. They were moving a child's coffin, a small, white casket. Claire clapped a hand over her mouth. One of the diggers turned his head slightly. His face caught the moonlight. It was Marion's husband. Claire ran. The next morning, she drove to Marion's house. There was no trace of Marion's husband. Claire searched the house, panic rising. There were no photos of him, no clothes in the closet, no sign he'd ever existed. Marion sipped coffee like nothing was wrong. "Sweetheart, are you feeling okay?" Claire grabbed a framed family photo off the shelf. It was one she knew well, taken when she was 16. But there was an empty space where someone had once stood. She ran outside, gasping for air. A new headstone stood in the cemetery, a fresh grave. The name on the stone, Bennett Wallace, her uncle. Claire's hands shook as she traced the engraving. Yesterday, this grave hadn't existed. Claire knew what she had to do. That night, she stole a shovel from the shed. She dug through the wet soil until the coffin's lid was exposed. Her breath came in sharp gasps as she pried it open. Inside was a corpse, but it wasn't her uncle. It was a stranger, a man she had never seen before, his skin gray and slack. Claire staggered backward, bile rising in her throat. "You shouldn't have done that," she whirled. The caretaker stood at the edge of the grave, his face heavy with sadness. "You should have left it alone," he whispered. Behind him, figures emerged from the mist, townsfolk, people she'd known since childhood. But their faces weren't quite right anymore, their features blurred as if the memory of them was fading. And then Claire saw it, a freshly carved headstone behind them, her name. Claire Conroy, born 1987, died tomorrow. Claire turned to run, but hands grabbed her, strong, cold hands. The last thing she heard before the earth swallowed her was the caretaker's voice, low and mournful. "You'll be someone new soon. You won't even remember." The next day, a woman named Claire Conroy moved into town. She looked the same, sounded the same, but if you asked her about her grandmother, she'd smile and say, "Oh, I never really knew her." And if you looked at the headstones in Black Hollow Cemetery, you'd notice that they shifted sometimes, just a little, just enough. The end. The porch light flickered as Ethan rang the doorbell. The sound of chimes echoed inside, familiar but somehow wrong. Footsteps. Then the door creaked open. His mother stood there, wrapped in a cardigan, her hair tied back in a way that made Ethan's chest ache with nostalgia. But something in her face was off, blank, like a receptionist greeting a stranger. "Can I help you?" Ethan smiled, shifting his duffel bag on his shoulder. "Mom, it's me." She blinked. The silence stretched. Then his father appeared behind her, arms crossed. His face was hard, unreadable. "Who are you?" The smile faltered on Ethan's lips. Dad, come on. They didn't move. A cold pulse of confusion ran through him. He laughed, a weak, nervous sound. Okay, funny, I get it. You're mad I've been gone so long. We don't have a son. His mother's voice was flat, matter of fact. The world seemed to tilt. Ethan's pulse quickened. He stepped forward, but his father's hand shot out to block him. What kind of joke is this? Ethan asked. Mom, please. I don't know you. He turned to the window, expecting to see the old family pictures lining the wall. But the frames were empty. No, not empty. Replaced. The photos were still there, but his face wasn't in them. Just his parents, alone, standing in front of birthday cakes and Christmas trees and vacation spots. The air inside smelled different, stale, like a house abandoned, or worse, one where something else had moved in. Ethan's stomach tightened. He turned toward the staircase. His bedroom door, his childhood safe place, was shut. A padlock glinted against the wood. He took a step back. I don't. Get off our property. The door slammed shut in his face. Ethan paced outside, gripping his phone with clammy hands. His best friend, Marcus, picked up after 2 rings. Dude, Ethan breathed. Something's wrong. A pause. Then, who is this? Ethan's breath caught in his throat. It's me, Ethan. Another silence. Then a chuckle. Cold, distant. Sorry, man. Don't know an Ethan. The call went dead. Ethan stared at the screen, pulse hammering. He scrolled through his texts. Every message thread was gone. His bank app wouldn't open. He tried his social security number on a verification site. Invalid. A buzzing sound broke the silence. A new text. Unknown number. You were gone too long. They replaced you. Ethan swallowed, fingers trembling. He turned back toward the house. The curtains twitched, his mother watching him from behind the glass. She flinched when their eyes met and disappeared into the dark. That night, Ethan slept in his car, parked across the street. At 3:14 a.m., a shadow moved in the backyard. Ethan sat up, breath hitching. The figure stood under the porch light, staring up at his old bedroom window. The light flickered, illuminating its face in brief, unnatural flashes. It was him. Same brown hair, same stubble, same eyes. But the smile was wrong. His parents opened the door. His mother let out a sob and threw her arms around the imposter. His father clapped him on the back. They were welcoming him home. Ethan pounded on the door, screaming, "Let me in. That's not me." His mother's face appeared behind the glass. She looked at him, not with confusion, not with fear, but with something worse. Pity. Then she mouthed, "You need to leave." The imposter stepped beside her, smirking. His father reached for the deadbolt. The lock clicked. Ethan lunged, shoving against the door, too late. Through the window, he watched himself step into his childhood home, arms around his mother, whispering something in her ear that made her sigh with relief. Ethan stumbled back, the world spinning. His own voice inside. His own face living his life. His reflection in the glass was pale, distorted, wrong. He waited until the house was dark. Then he broke in. The basement window gave easily, rusted lock snapping under his weight. The familiar scent of old wood and mildew filled his nose. He crept upstairs, past the darkened kitchen, down the hall to the living room, where his imposter sat, staring at the old family photos on the mantel. His parents had gone to bed. Ethan stepped forward, hands clenched. "Who are you?" The figure turned. "Ethan." "No." Ethan growled. "I'm Ethan." The thing in his skin grinned. "Are you?" Ethan took a shaky step back. Something moved behind the imposter. A shape, nor a shadow. Something stretching and curling wrongly behind him, warping the air like heat waves over asphalt. The thing stood, stretching, its bones cracking like old floorboards. "You left," it murmured, stepping closer. "I took your place, and they're happier now." Ethan turned and ran. Behind him, his father's voice called out, groggy but stern, "Get out of our house." His mother's footsteps creaked down the stairs. She reached for her husband's hand, her face calm. They weren't hypnotized. They weren't possessed. They had chosen this. As Ethan fled into the night, he heard the door lock behind him. 3 days later, he tried the police. No record of an Ethan Carter in the system. No family registered at his address. The bank wouldn't recognize his name. By the end of the week, he was a ghost, homeless, nameless, forgotten. He watched from across the street as his own life continued without him. His imposter playing catch with his father, his mother laughing at the dinner table, his bedroom window glowing softly at night, shadows moving inside. Then his phone buzzed. "Unknown number. Now it's your turn. Find someone to replace." Ethan stared at his reflection in the car window. For the first time, he wasn't smiling. The end. The house was silent when they returned. Not eerily so, just the usual quiet of a sleeping infant, the soft hum of the baby monitor, the gentle ticking of the hall clock. Everything was just as they'd left it. The lights dimmed, Lily's tiny pink socks in the living room exactly where she had kicked them off earlier. Emma checked the bassinet first. Lily was there, snug in her blanket, breathing softly. But the sitter was gone. No note, no text, no lingering scent of perfume or shampoo. Just gone. Strange, but not alarming. Maybe the sitter had left as soon as they pulled up, figuring she wouldn't disturb them. Maybe she had texted James instead of her. Emma sighed, smoothing Lily's blanket. They could clear it up in the morning. Then she noticed the baby monitor light blinking. She picked it up. The night had recorded over 4 hours of footage. The audio was crystal clear, Lily stirring a soft rustling, then humming. A warm, low voice sang a lullaby, rocking sounds rhythmic in the background. A woman whispering, cooing, reassuring the baby with an almost maternal tenderness. Emma's stomach twisted. She scrubbed through the footage, watching the time pass. The humming continued, the soft creak of the rocking chair never stopping. But there was no one there, no sitter, no figure. The chair rocked itself. Emma's breath hitched. Her fingers fumbled as she switched to the home security app, checking the front door camera. The sitter should have arrived at 7:30. She should have seen a young woman, maybe a college student, stepping up the porch, ringing the doorbell. But the footage showed nothing. No one had ever come. Emma clutched the phone so hard her fingers hurt. James, oblivious, was already in bed. Emma crept to the nursery, her heart hammering. The rocking chair sat motionless. She reached out, hand trembling, pressing her palm to the worn wooden armrest. It was warm, as if someone had just been sitting there. Lily stirred in her bassinet, eyes fluttering open. She didn't cry. Instead, she smiled at something over Emma's shoulder. A sleepy, knowing smile. Emma turned. Nothing. Her skin prickled. The sitter had never arrived, but something had been here. Something had rocked Lily, hummed to her, whispered to her. Something that never showed up on the camera. She took a step back. A board creaked underfoot. No, not underfoot. Behind her, near the chair. She didn't look back. She grabbed Lily and fled to the bedroom, locking the door behind her. The next morning, Emma barely touched her coffee. She kept refreshing her messages, hoping, praying. The sitter had sent something, anything to explain. Nothing. Did you get her number from Laura? James asked, scrolling through his phone. Emma nodded stiffly. Yeah, she swore by her. James frowned. Maybe check with her. Maybe she gave you the wrong number. That was logical. That was reasonable. Emma hesitated, then dialed the number she had saved under babysitter. The line picked up, but no voice greeted her, just static. Hello? Emma's throat tightened. Who is this? A pause, then a whisper. She needed me. She still does. Emma slammed the phone down. James jumped. What the hell? Emma's breath came in quick, shallow gasps. It wasn't. The baby monitor crackled. They both turned. The nursery door, slightly ajar, let out a long, aching creak. Emma grabbed James's arm. We're leaving. Now. James, still trying to process, didn't argue. He scooped up Lily, who giggled softly, then turned, waved at something in the nursery. Emma did not look. They checked into a hotel that night. Emma didn't sleep. She replayed the baby monitor footage over and over, watching the rocking chair creak, listening to the voice hum that lullaby. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. She couldn't shake the way it sounded, not like a threat, like a promise. Lily babbled in the crib beside her. Emma rolled over, exhausted, pressing her face into the pillow. She was just about to drift off when Mama... Her blood ran cold. Lily wasn't old enough to speak. Emma sat up slowly. Lily wasn't looking at her. She was looking at the corner of the hotel room, smiling. She clapped her tiny hands. She's coming back. They returned home the next day. They didn't want to, but what else could they do? Their life was here. The house felt different, warmer, as if someone had been keeping it company. Emma didn't check the nursery immediately. She couldn't. But that night, after James was asleep, she had to know. She crept to the doorway, peeking in. Everything looked normal, except the rocking chair. It was turned toward the crib now, not how she left it, and sitting on the seat, folded neatly, was a baby blanket Emma had never seen before. She backed away. The baby monitor flickered on, the green light blinking. A low hum filled the room. The rocking chair moved, slowly, steadily. And in the monitor's soft crackle, a voice whispered, "Shh, she's sleeping." Emma's throat closed. The next morning she told James they were moving. That same morning, as she was packing a box, she heard Lily giggle. She turned, forcing a smile. Lily was looking up at her, eyes bright. Her little lips formed a perfect, happy shape. Mama. Emma's breath caught. Lily had spoken her first word. Her heart swelled even in the midst of the terror. Oh, baby. Lily giggled again, kicking her tiny feet. Then she tilted her head, smiling wider. No, Emma froze. Mama. Lily lifted her chubby arms, reaching, not for Emma, for something behind her. She's coming back. That night, the baby monitor recorded something new, a lullaby. A voice, warm and loving, rocking a chair that moved by itself, and the sound of a baby cooing happily in reply, because the sitter had never arrived and the babysitter never left. The end. Jake's first thought upon waking was that he had overslept. The room was too bright. The ceiling was unfamiliar. White, smooth, no water stains or cracks. He sat up. The sheets weren't his. They smelled of lavender. The nightstand was unfamiliar too. A framed picture sat on it. Him, smiling, arm wrapped around a woman he didn't recognize. 2 kids were in the frame, grinning up at him. A soft rustling. A weight shifted in the bed beside him. "Morning, babe," the woman mumbled, stretching. Jake shot out of bed so fast he nearly tripped. His breath came sharp and ragged, his heart hammering in his chest. The The woman blinked at him, concern flickering in her eyes. "Jake, you okay?" He opened his mouth, closed it. 1,000 questions clawed up his throat, but only one made it out. "Who are you?" Her face froze, then twisted into something fragile, something hurt. "What kind of joke is that?" Jake spun. 2 kids, his kids, thundered into the room, launching themselves onto the bed. A boy and a girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old. The girl's tiny arms wrapped around his waist. "Mommy said we're going to the lake today." Jake flinched at her touch. His limbs felt like someone else's. This is a dream. A coma. A psychotic break. But it wasn't. The woman sat up now, watching him carefully. "Jake, maybe you should sit down." But Jake didn't sit. Instead, he turned and bolted. The house was fully furnished, walls lined with framed photos of his life. Vacations, birthdays, Christmas mornings. He was in all of them. His hands shook as he snatched his phone off the counter. He pressed the lock button. It unlocked with his fingerprint. He thumbed through the gallery, his breath catching. The pictures weren't doctored. They weren't fake. It was him, laughing, holding hands with his wife, teaching his son how to ride a bike. But none of it was real. A notification popped up. Meeting at 9:30. Meeting. He had a job. His head spun. The walls seemed to shift around him. The only thing that made sense was getting the hell out of there. Jake drove straight to his childhood home. It was supposed to be a 2-bedroom ranch on Sycamore Street. His parents were supposed to be inside. He would knock, and his mom would open the door in her robe, coffee in hand, teasing him for showing up unannounced. But the house was abandoned. The windows were boarded up. A "for sale" sign rotted in the overgrown lawn. Jake's stomach churned. He pulled out his phone, typing his parents' names into Google. Obituaries. Both had died 10 years ago. Jake stumbled backward, bile rising in his throat. No, he wasn't crazy. He knew he had just spoken to them last week. A voice, low and amused, whispered in his ear. "Did you?" Jake pounded on the door of his old apartment. It opened a crack, revealing a man in his 30s. "Can I help you?" Jake tried to keep his voice steady. "I live here. This is my apartment." The man frowned. "I've lived here for 5 years, buddy." "That's impossible," Jake whispered. The man's face softened. "Hey man, are you okay?" Jake turned and fled. He sat in his car shaking, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering him to reality. His pockets felt heavy. Frowning, he reached inside and pulled out a small folded note. It hadn't been there before. His stomach twisted as he unfolded it, the handwriting sharp and deliberate. "Don't believe them. Your real life is waiting." At dinner, he barely spoke. His wife smiled like everything was normal, like she didn't notice the way he flinched when she touched his hand. The kids chattered about cartoons. Jake felt like he was in a play where everyone else had the script but him. Later, she found him in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the note. He didn't answer. She sat beside him, rubbing his back. The touch sent ice down his spine. "I know it's been tough lately," she said gently. "The stress, the memory lapses." Jake's grip tightened on the note. "I'm not forgetting anything. This isn't my life." Her fingers curled into his. "Honey," she whispered. Jake turned. Her face was unreadable in the dim light. Then softly, so softly he almost didn't hear it, she said, "You're almost ready to forget." Jake's breath caught. A pressure bloomed behind his eyes, deep in his skull, pulsing. Forget. His mind blurred, a haze creeping in at the edges. His fingers loosened. The note slipped from his hand. She smiled. He didn't remember why he had been holding it in the first place. Jake woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee. His wife was in the kitchen. The kids were watching cartoons. A warmth filled him as he stretched, a slow smile creeping onto his lips. He barely remembered the nightmare from last night. Something about being lost, being confused, something about a note. It didn't matter. He kissed his wife on the cheek, ruffled his son's hair, and settled in for breakfast. It was going to be a good day. The end. The key didn't fit. Daniel Carter turned the metal over in his fingers, frowning. It looked right. The same dull brass, the same scratches along the bow, the same tiny chip at the corner. But the lock refused to turn. He tried again. Click. Jammed. The door itself was familiar. A little scuffed at the bottom, a faint dent where he'd kicked it once in frustration. This was his apartment. He was sure of it, wasn't he? His skin prickled. His fingers were trembling. He hadn't eaten much since the surgery. Maybe that was it. Maybe the anesthesia hadn't fully worn off, and his brain was making mistakes. He just needed to call someone. He pulled out his phone. No service. His stomach twisted. He stepped back, scanning the dimly lit hallway of his apartment complex. Everything was exactly how he remembered, except somehow not. At the end of the hall, the elevator dinged. Daniel turned quickly, expecting to see a neighbor step out. But the doors slid open to an empty shaft, a gaping black void. He staggered back, his heart pounded, and then from inside his pocket, his phone vibrated. He yanked it out, desperate, only to see a message from an unknown number. "Mr. Carter, please return to your room." His breath hitched. Room. The hospital. Something about that word sent his mind spiraling. He turned, rushing down the hallway, past the two quiet doors of his neighbors. When he reached the stairwell, he shoved through and bolted downward. The moment his feet hit the lobby floor, the fluorescent lights hummed louder, a rising electric whine. Daniel's vision blurred, and then he was back inside the hospital. "Oh, Mr. Carter, there you are." The receptionist at the front desk smiled politely. Daniel felt cold. He had just left this place. He had walked out the front doors this morning. I was just discharged," he said. His voice sounded weaker than he wanted. "I was here for a surgery, minor procedure, 3 days ago. My name's Daniel Carter." The receptionist's smile faltered. She typed something on her screen. "I'm sorry, sir. There's no record of a Daniel Carter." A cold weight settled in his stomach. No, that's a mistake. I was in room 319. She typed again. "There's no room 319 in this hospital, sir." Daniel's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't happening. He reached into his jacket pocket, searching for anything, his discharge papers, a wristband proof. But there was nothing. No papers, no bandages, no wristband. His entire hospital stay was gone. The receptionist's phone rang. She picked up, listened for a second, then held the receiver toward him. "For you." Daniel stared at it. A voice crackled through the line, hollow and mechanical. "Mr. Carter, you were never meant to leave." He ran. Daniel pushed through staff and visitors, ignoring their startled gasps. He found the records room and yanked the door open, stepping inside. The air smelled sterile, like bleach and something too clean to be real. Filing cabinets loomed in rows. His name. He had to find his name. His fingers flew over folders, flipping through Carter, James, Carter, Lydia, and then Carter, Daniel. He pulled the folder free. His hands trembled as he turned to the patient details. And then he saw it. Status, deceased. His throat tightened. No, this wasn't possible. A soft shuffling noise came from the hallway. Daniel froze. The overhead PA system crackled to life. "Mr. Carter, please return to your room." His breathing turned ragged. He bolted for the back exit. The hallway stretched. It had been short before, just a few steps. But now it went on forever, the linoleum floor reflecting the overhead lights like a mirror. Every door he passed was marked 319. He sprinted forward, heart pounding, until suddenly he was back in his hospital bed. A nurse stood over him, smiling gently. "Mr. Carter," she said, smoothing down his blanket, "your discharge was a mistake. Let's try again." Daniel's lips parted, but no sound came out. His body felt wrong. He looked down. The IV line pierced his arm, but the tube led to nothing. No fluid bag, just a hollow, empty needle inside his skin. The PA system crackled again. "Try again, try again, try again." The words looped, overlapping. He yanked the IV out. Pain lanced through his veins, but he stumbled forward past the nurse, past the bed, toward the only window in the room. It looked out onto more hospital, endless rooms, endless beds. The PA system's voice shifted. It was no longer robotic. It was his own voice. "Try again." His vision blurred. The next time Daniel opened his eyes, he did not fight it. The nurse helped him sit up, placing his chart beside him. He glanced at it. Status, pending. Outside the window, a new name appeared on the hospital admission board. Someone else was coming. The cycle continued. And Daniel waited, because that's what patients do. The end. Olivia arrived in Fairbrook just after sunset, her stomach churning with unease. The air smelled the same, wood smoke and damp earth. But the town felt different, hollowed out. The streets were nearly empty, the houses too still. She hadn't been back in years, not since she left for college, not since she tried to forget. The funeral home loomed ahead, its old brick walls worn by time. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of lilies, and something cloying, something wrong. Her mother sat in the front row, dry-eyed, hands folded in her lap. A few others filled the pews, neighbors, old friends, people Olivia barely recognized. And then there was the casket. She stepped forward, expecting the cold, undeniable weight of grief to crush her, but instead her body went rigid. That wasn't her brother. The man inside had the same dark hair, the same jawline, but it wasn't him. The nose was wrong, the shape of his hands, the way his lips rested, not in the slight, this knowing smirk her brother always wore, but stiff, unfamiliar. She turned to her mother, whispering, "Mom, that's not Jamie." Her mother flinched, her fingers clenching. "Olivia, don't. Not now." Olivia looked around, expecting anyone to share her horror, but the mourners only offered her vacant, understanding smiles. She backed away from the casket. "This isn't right. That's not him." The funeral director approached, hands folded neatly in front of him. "I assure you, Miss Davenport, this is your brother." "No, it's not." She shook her head. "I know my own brother." A pause, a heavy, careful silence. Then her mother's voice, fragile and sharp. "That's Jamie, Olivia. Don't say such horrible things." Her pulse thundered in her ears. They were lying. Or worse, they believed it. That night, Olivia sat on her childhood bed, newspaper clippings scattered around her. She had spent hours at the town's library, combing through the archives, searching for something, anything that would prove she wasn't losing her mind. Then she found it, an obituary from 20 years ago. James Davenport, age 23, died tragically in an accident. Beloved son and brother. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. 20 years ago, her brother was 23. He had died yesterday. She flipped through the pages with shaking fingers. Another article, old and yellowed with time. A funeral procession. The same casket. The same face inside it. No, that was impossible. Heart hammering, Olivia checked the cemetery the next morning. The mist clung low to the ground, wrapping around tombstones like grasping fingers. She walked down the worn dirt path past names she recognized from childhood. Mr. Lorne, who ran the hardware store. Mrs. Keller, her old third-grade teacher. Then she found it. The tombstone was simple, unremarkable. James Davenport. She swallowed hard, tracing her fingers over the engraved letters. But then her gaze drifted, just a few feet away, past the curling vines and damp moss. Another James Davenport, then another and another. She staggered back, bile rising in her throat. 5 identical tombstones, each with Jamie's name, each marking the death of a man who looked like her brother, each with a different year. The ground beneath her felt unsteady, as if the earth itself wanted to swallow her whole. She turned and ran, heart pounding, lungs burning. She had to get out of this town. When Olivia returned to her mother's house, the town was too quiet. No cars, no voices, no wind in the trees, just silence, stretching too thick, too unnatural. Inside, the house was the same as she had left it. Framed photographs lining the walls, the faint smell of coffee lingering in the kitchen. But something was off. Her mother stood by the sink, staring out the window. "Mom," Olivia whispered, stepping closer. "Why are there so many graves?" Her mother's fingers tightened around the counter. She didn't turn around. "Mom." Still, her mother didn't move. And then in a voice that wasn't hers at all, she said, "You shouldn't have remembered." The air turned heavy, pressing against Olivia's lungs. She stumbled back, heart hammering. She ran upstairs, her breath coming in short gasps, and locked herself in the bathroom. She turned on the light, gripping the edges of the sink, and then she looked up. Her reflection wasn't right. The woman in the mirror had hollow, empty eyes, her lips parted, whispering, "You shouldn't have remembered." The light flickered. The house groaned. From outside, deep in the cemetery, the earth began to stir. And then Olivia heard the first voice rise from the graves. A low, rasping whisper. They buried the wrong one again. The end. Adam's hands gripped the wheel as he drove along the dark stretch of highway. The countryside sprawled in endless black, the only signs of life the occasional deer darting between the trees and the low hum of static from his radio. The night was thick, the kind of silence that made a man feel like he was the last person on earth. His stomach growled, sharp and insistent. Then he saw it. A neon sign buzzed in the distance, its pink and blue glow cutting through the night like an oasis in the void. Marge's Diner. Adam frowned. Hadn't he taken this road before? He didn't remember ever seeing a diner here. But hunger was hunger. He pulled into the gravel lot, tires crunching against loose stone. The place looked like something out of a time capsule. Chrome trim, a checkerboard floor visible through the window, a flickering open sign barely holding on to life. The front door had a little brass bell that jingled as he stepped inside. Warmth wrapped around him immediately, thick with the smell of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee. A few patrons sat in booths, speaking in low murmurs. A waitress in a faded blue uniform smiled as he slid onto a stool at the counter. "What can I get you, hun?" Adam glanced at the menu board hanging on the wall. prices looked off. Burger, $1.75. Coffee, 50 cents. A joke, right? Maybe they were running some kind of promotion. "I'll take a cheeseburger and fries," he said. The waitress scribbled on her pad, ripped off the ticket, and pinned it to the spinning wheel by the kitchen window. The cook, a burly man in a paper hat, nodded without looking up. As he waited, Adam glanced around. The whole place had a strange familiarity, like a dream he was only half remembering. A jukebox stood in the corner, glowing softly. Then suddenly it whirred to life. "Dream a little dream of me." His breath caught. His mother used to sing that song to him when he was a kid. He hadn't heard it in years, not since. No, he shook his head. Just a coincidence. His food arrived and the moment passed. The burger was perfect, juicy, just the right amount of char. The fries crisp and golden. He hadn't eaten this well in ages. Out of habit, he pulled out his phone and snapped a picture of the neon sign through the window. Something about this place felt special. After paying his bill, he turned to the waitress. "How long has this place been here?" he asked. She tilted her head, thinking, "Oh, a long time now, hon. You come back soon, okay?" He nodded, stepping out into the cool night. The bell jingled behind him. When Adam got home, he texted his friend Jason. "Adam, just found this great little diner on 43. Marge's. Crazy cheap. Good food." "Jason, what diner?" "Marge's. About 30 minutes outside town." "There's nothing out there but farmland, dude." A cold feeling crept into Adam's stomach. He opened his photo gallery to show Jason proof. The picture was gone. The next night, Adam drove back the same road, the same turns. But where the diner had been, there was only an empty lot. Overgrown grass, a rusted for sale sign swaying in the breeze. No tire tracks, no neon glow. Adam's head spun. He parked, stepping onto the lot, kicked at the dirt where the entrance should have been. He turned in circles, searching for any sign that Marge's had ever been real. No. He remembered the warmth of the diner, the taste of the fries, the jukebox. Determined, he drove to a gas station a few miles up the road. The attendant, an older man with thinning white hair, barely glanced up from his newspaper. "Hey, do you know what happened to Marge's diner?" The old man froze. The paper trembled in his hands. "That place burned down in '82, he whispered. "Everyone inside died." Adam felt his stomach drop. "That's impossible," he said. "I was just there last night." The old man shook his head slowly, stepping back like Adam had just said something profane. "Son," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "you best forget you ever saw it." Adam left in a daze. His hands were clammy on the steering wheel. His phone buzzed. "Jason, you okay, man?" "No, that diner. It burned down 40 years ago." "Are you messing with me?" "I swear to God I was there last night. I ate there. I talked to people." "Dude, you're freaking me out." A burst of static cut through the radio. The station flickered, warping into a slow, crackling melody. "Dream a little dream of me." Adam's breath hitched. The static deepened. Then, through the noise, a voice whispered, "Come back. We've been waiting for you." His car engine stuttered, then died. The streetlights above him flickered and went dark, and in the rearview mirror, the neon sign buzzed back to life. Marge's diner stood behind him. The bell over the door jingled, and someone stepped out onto the porch, smiling, waiting. The end. The baby in the crib isn't hers. Amanda knows this the way she knows her own name, the way she remembers the burn of labor, the agony that split her in two. When she lifts the onesie's sleeve, her stomach plummets. No birthmark. Behind her, the nursery monitor crackles. The baby is awake, watching. Amanda sits on the hospital bed, the tiny weight of her daughter in her arms. A nurse smiles down at them. Beautiful, isn't she? The baby is, but wrong. Something about the face, too symmetrical. The nose, slightly narrower, and her eyes, darker than she remembers. But it's the birthmark that sends a cold ripple down Amanda's spine. Her throat is raw. She had a birthmark on her arm, right here. The nurse hesitates before her smile snaps back into place. Some fade quickly, dear. Don't worry, you're exhausted. David, her husband, kisses her forehead. It's fine, babe. You're just wiped out. She forces herself to nod. But deep inside, something fragile shifts. At home, unease coils in her stomach. The baby hardly cries, sleeps too much. The wrongness prickles like a splinter under her skin. She doesn't react to my voice, Amanda tells David one night, gripping his arm. I say her name, and she just stares. David sighs. She's a newborn, Amanda. You're overthinking. Seriously, get some rest. That's what everyone says. You're tired. You're imagining things. But then, on the baby monitor, she hears something off. A sound she shouldn't hear. Not babbling, not cooing. A whisper. She freezes. The volume is low, but she hears it clear as a blade pressed to bone. Mommy, stop looking. Her blood turns to ice. The next morning, Amanda packs her daughter into the car and drives back to the hospital. She sneaks into the medical records room when no one's looking. Rows of labeled files, the scent of antiseptic thick in the air. Her fingers tremble as she types in her name. A loading screen. Then, no record found. Her stomach clenches. She searches for her doctor. No results. Her nurse. Nothing. Panic claws at her throat. Then she finds the security footage. Amanda clicks the video feed from her delivery. The screen flickers and there she is, on the table, screaming. The nurses move fast. A wail fills the room, her baby. But then a shift. A nurse she doesn't recognize enters. She picks up the baby, swaddles her. Amanda's eyelids flutter, exhausted. No one stops the nurse as she walks out. Seconds later, another baby is placed in Amanda's arms. Amanda chokes on her breath. The footage warps, glitches, then the screen goes black. Footsteps behind her. She turns. A nurse stands in the doorway, expressionless. You weren't supposed to see that, the nurse says. Amanda runs, down sterile halls, past masked nurses who don't look surprised. She drives home, mind racing. If that's not my baby, where is she? Who took her? Why? That night, she locks the door, clutching her phone, but the exhaustion swallows her whole. At 3:16 a.m., the baby monitor crackles again. Amanda wakes to the sound of tiny breathing. Then, Mommy, she stops breathing. Tiny feet pat against the crib mattress. A shuffle, a rustle of blankets. Then, slowly, a giggle. Amanda grips the sheets. Her heart thunders. Mommy, you should have stopped looking. Her hands shake as she clicks the monitor screen on. The crib is empty. Something moves in the darkness near the corner of the room. Then the baby laughs. Amanda's stomach turns, and then the baby climbs back into the crib by itself. The next morning, Amanda tries to tell David, but she doesn't, because David looks at her differently, like she's fragile, breakable. And when she checks her phone, the security footage from last night is gone. That afternoon, a nurse calls. Mrs. Green, you had an appointment today. The hospital psychiatrist is concerned. Postpartum paranoia is common. Amanda grips the phone. I'm not crazy. Of course not, dear. The nurse's voice is too soft, but we do need to check on the baby, make sure everything's okay. Amanda swallows. A pause. Then from the crib, Slowly she turns. The baby is watching her, smiling, mouth too wide. She presses the phone to her ear. The baby's lips move, and the nurse's voice comes out of them. You should have stopped looking. Click. The end. Lucas always answered Rachel's calls. It was their rule, one of those silly but sacred things couples make up in the quiet spaces between I love yous and did you eat yet? If either of them called after midnight, no matter the reason, the other had to answer. What if it's an emergency? Rachel had asked once, curled up against him in bed. Then I'll always be there, Lucas had promised. Last night he broke the rule. The call came at 12:37 a.m. Lucas had seen the screen light up, her name glowing softly in the dark. But exhaustion wrapped around him like a heavy blanket. Just 5 more minutes. Just let it ring. The call ended. When he woke up, Rachel was gone. Not just missing, erased. Her contact was gone from his phone. He scrolled through his messages, but their conversations had vanished. Her Instagram, her texts, her photos, everything was missing. Lucas called her number. The number you have dialed is not in service. That wasn't possible. Heart hammering, he drove to her apartment. Her door was unlocked. Inside, the space felt wrong. The air was still, heavy. Dust motes floated in the morning light undisturbed. Lucas rushed to her bedroom, expecting messy blankets, her hoodie draped over the chair, her coffee mug from last night. Nothing. The bed was made. The dresser was empty. The closet held no clothes. It wasn't just cleaned out. It had never been lived in. His stomach twisted. The walls felt like they were pressing in, squeezing out the oxygen. This wasn't just her absence. This was something else. Something unnatural. He backed away, his breath hitching. This isn't real. Shaking, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through his gallery, searching for even one picture of Rachel. Nothing. He checked their messages again. His fingers trembled as he searched her name. No results. He went to his call log, staring at the last incoming call from last night. The name was gone, but the number was still there, an unknown number. With shaking hands, Lucas tapped call back. The phone rang, once, twice, a third time. Then a click. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Then a voice, low, wet, distorted. You broke the rule. Lucas gripped the phone tighter. Who is this? You let her go. His throat clenched. What do you mean? Where's Rachel? There was a pause. Then the voice whispered, now it's your turn. The call ended. The phone screen went black. Lucas swallowed hard, staring at his reflection in the dark glass. His own face, pale, eyes wide. They had moved. His reflection smiled, but Lucas hadn't. The first thing to go was his number. His mom called later that day. Lucas, I tried texting you, but it says your number isn't registered. Then his social media accounts locked him out. His emails required a password reset, but when he tried, they claimed his accounts didn't exist. At work, no one acknowledged him. Co-workers who had spoken to him every day now walked past him like he was a stranger. At lunch, he sat across from his best friend Aaron, who was busy scrolling on his phone. Dude, Lucas said, waving. Aaron didn't look up. Lucas reached out, nudging his arm. Hey man, you okay? Aaron flinched, glancing around as if feeling a draft. Then he got up and left. Lucas stared at the empty seat. Something cold dripped down his spine. Hello, he tried louder. A woman at the next table briefly glanced in his direction before returning to her food. He raised his voice. Can anyone hear me? No response. No one even looked up. It was like he didn't exist. By nightfall, his apartment started forgetting him too. The photos on his walls were missing him, leaving only blank spaces where he should have been. His bed, his clothes, his shoes, vanishing piece by piece. By midnight, Lucas stood alone in an empty apartment, phone gripped tight. He called the number again. It rang, and rang, and rang. Then the voice whispered, "Are you ready?" The air around him shifted. The walls stretched and darkened, the ceiling pulling away, a vast emptiness swallowing his world whole. Lucas's breathing turned shallow. "Please, please, I don't understand. Now it's your turn." Darkness wrapped around him, pulling him under. The phone rang. Somewhere else. A young woman stirred in bed, groggy, her phone vibrating on the nightstand. She squinted at the screen. An unknown number. Her gut twisted. Something in the back of her mind whispered that this was wrong. She hesitated, then let it ring. The call ended. Her bedroom was empty when she woke up. She never existed. Somewhere in the void between worlds, Lucas screamed, but there was no one left to hear him. The end. Daisy's growl stopped Ben in his tracks. She stood stiff in the hallway, ears pinned back, pupils black and wide. The kind of look she gave the mailman, the one neighbor she hated, the possum that had once gotten into the garage. A warning. Daisy. She didn't move, didn't blink. He turned to see what she was looking at. Nothing. Just the empty hallway, the half-lit bedroom beyond. "Daisy, come on." He patted his legs, stepping toward her. She backed away. That was new. She had never done that before. Ben tried not to think about it as he climbed into bed. Dogs got weird about things. The smell of a new detergent. The sound of something distant, something only their ears could pick up. The house settling. Yeah, the house settling. Daisy didn't come into the bedroom that night. She curled up just outside the door, facing the hallway, watching. Ben left the light on. The next night, he found her staring at the corner of the living room. Nothing was there, but Daisy's hackles were up, breath slow and steady, like she was waiting for something to move. When he approached, she flinched, growling low in her throat. His hand hovered above her head. She always let him pet her, even when she was nervous. But now, she pulled away. That's when he saw it. She wasn't looking at him, she was looking past him. By the third night, the unease had rooted itself deep. Ben tried to shake it, telling himself it was all in his head. But something was off. The house felt different, colder, like the walls had pulled back slightly, making just enough room for something unseen to stand beside him. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she was going blind. That's what he told himself when he set up the camera in the living room, just to check, just to be sure. The next morning he scrolled through the footage. Daisy lay curled in the hallway, ears flicking every so often. 2:59 a.m. She lifted her head. 3 a.m. Her eyes locked on something unseen. She stood up. Ben walked into the room. Ben, who was already in bed. The figure knelt beside Daisy, stroking her fur. She trembled beneath its touch but didn't run. Its voice was soft, but the camera's microphone picked it up. "Good girl." Ben bolted the doors, checked every window. He pressed a chair against the front door, fastened the chain, double-checked the locks. That night, he barely slept, expecting the sound of footsteps that didn't belong to him. But morning came, and nothing had happened, or so he thought. There were muddy footprints beside his bed, trailing from the mattress to the backyard door. Daisy Daisy was gone. The backyard was empty. No sign of forced entry. No sign of Daisy. Ben scrolled through the footage with shaking hands. 3:14 a.m. His breath caught. Daisy stood at the bedroom door staring at the bed. At him. 3:15 a.m. He watched as the other him, rose from the mattress. The real Ben never moved. The doppelganger knelt beside Daisy, stroking her fur. She trembled. Good girl. Then without a sound it walked to the backyard door. The camera caught the faintest reflection in the glass. The copy was smiling. Ben set a trap, a handwritten note placed by his bed. Just a single phrase. Who are you? He left a thin layer of flour by the door, checked the locks, took Daisy's old leash and wrapped it around his wrist, hoping, praying he'd wake up if anything touched it. Then he slept. The next morning the note was gone. The flour was undisturbed, and Daisy's leash, it lay coiled on the floor, still tied in a perfect knot. That night he stayed awake. 3:14 a.m. The house held its breath. 3:15 a.m. Footsteps. He clutched the flashlight, barely daring to breathe. The bedroom door creaked open. It stood there. His own face, staring back at him. Not quite right. The smile was too still. The breath too soft. The posture slightly off, like it was wearing his skin, but didn't quite understand how to make it fit. He turned the flashlight on. Nothing. But in the mirror, it was there. Watching him. Smiling. A split second too late. Ben woke up in his bed. Sunlight streamed through the window. The air felt heavy, wrong, like something had been pressed into the walls, something that didn't belong. Daisy's bed was empty, but something was there. A small, folded note. His stomach dropped as he reached for it. The handwriting was his own. She knew before you did. Ben ran to the bathroom, gripped the sink, stared at his reflection, searching. A trick of the mind, he told himself. He moved his hand. The reflection followed. He blinked. It blinked. He inhaled. The reflection was too slow. A second delay, a heartbeat off. And then it smiled. The end. And that's the end. But the night is far from over. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Tell me, are you still awake? Or did the whispers follow you into your dreams? If sleep won't come just yet, there are plenty more stories waiting for you. Go on, pick another. I'll be here.